Worst thing you could say as a cop is it's quiet. July 10th, 2013 was one of the quietest nights. We were working what's called a pitman schedule. So it's a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, and we're drinking coffee, and I remember saying to him, God, I wish there was anything to happen. And over the radio, the officer on the desk says, start heading to this address, open 911 call, unknown emergency. I hear people when they have near-death experience to see this big flash of light. Well, that's kind of what I saw. I just saw a flash of light. I feel heat. I feel gunpowder. He's shot at police twice. There's no reason why he's not going to continue to do it. I'm pretty much resigned to the fact that I'm going to die.
You know, what does it take to be a good cop?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Because what does it take? Does it take compassion to some extent? Does it take aggression to some extent? Does it take authority to some extent? But if I had to pinpoint what it took to be a good cop, you have to have a background knowing something. And just to bring it home, like, how am I going to know if you were hiding drugs if I had never done drugs or never seen drugs or smelled drugs? I need some sort of background in whatever I'm trying to enforce. Somebody would come up and they're trying to steal something and they're going to give you a line. Well, guess what? It's the same line that I used when I was a kid,
Yeah.
So you need that, but you also need to be empathetic. You need to some extent, put yourself in that person's shoes who you're trying to correct. But at its core, police work is corrective, not punitive. You're trying to correct bad behavior. So you'll have guys, I get in trouble for saying this a lot. You'll have guys who were shoved in lockers in high school. And then they wear the badge, they get some power, and they abuse the hell out of that power. And then you have the other guys, like I wasn't shoved in a locker. First of all, I don't fit in a locker.
Hey, definitely not.
I don't fit in a locker. I wasn't shoved in a locker. I was actually on a lot of times on the other side of the law, but I've seen it on the other side as well. And it's very dangerous. So sometimes you got to step in. I had this thing. I would get if I was going to arrest somebody, say it was a car chase or whatever, some sort of hot call, I would put the handcuffs on as quick as possible because inevitably somebody's going to take a bonus shot on them. And what a bonus shot is you get one last shot in on handcuffs. Mm-hmm. And it never works out well. You're probably too young to remember the Rodney King video. All right?
I do, yeah.
So the Rodney King video, it's a slippery slope. So Rodney King doing 90 miles an hour through a residential neighborhood, high as a kite on PCP. These cops are chasing him, putting their lives in danger. The adrenaline's high. They catch the guy. So what do you do when you catch him? Rodney King is gigantic. Okay, he was like 6'6". He's a big guy and he's high. And if you ever dealt with somebody on PCP, they feel no pain. Mm-hmm. So what do? You tell him to comply. And what do you do if he doesn't comply? Now, here's the problem. They kept telling him, get down. He kept moving forward. You got to watch that video through a policeman's eyes. He kept moving forward, and they start hitting him. Did they take a couple extra whacks? Absolutely, because their adrenaline's up. It's something that you do. You can't help it. But that one extra whack created chaos.
Yeah.
So you have to really not take anything personal because you're going to get called some of the worst names in the world. People are going to misjudge you. People are going to lie to you. This is why cops become so mistrustful because you're getting lied to every single day. You catch somebody without a seatbelt on, something as innocuous as having no seatbelt on. And then you pull them over. Well, I just pulled out of this thing. Yeah, but that place is like a mile and a half away. So you're lying to me. Oh, I just took it off. You're lying. And then all of a sudden you start to get into somewhat of a litigious mindset where you think everybody's lying to you. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by a litigious mindset is if you're in college and you have a professor that doesn't really care for you, maybe they're a little harsh on you, and you start getting into a mindset where everything they do is wrong. Everything they do is trying to suppress your education. Maybe so, maybe not. But your tunnel vision, you're looking at it only one way. It takes a lot to be a cop. It takes a lot of mental fortitude. In New Jersey, it's changing because the salaries are so high. You used to take this job knowing that you're never going to be poor. You're going to be okay. You're never going to get rich, but you took it because there was service. You had the chance to make a difference in the world. You're taking a job that they make movies about. Now the salaries are so competitive, and parents are pushing their kids into police work rather than going to an engineering school because you're gonna have a pension. You're gonna be able to do 25 years if you're able to make 25 years. That's the big trick.
So let me ask you that, because that kind of continues with the question I was looking through with here. Does it take a special person, or is it something learned that you can develop?
I've seen people who should have never been cops, and they sort of filter out pretty quick. You have to be able. I think it takes a special person. It really does, because if you're going to think you're going to go in there and do it your way, you're not. It's a paramilitary organization. Okay, it's you do what your bosses say, but the responsibility lays a lot on the bosses. If you're doing exactly what your boss says, it doesn't alleviate you from doing from any type of prosecution. But if you don't do what they say, you're gonna get in trouble. You're gonna have a hard career. So not everybody's cut out for this life. Some people, it's a dirty job, and it eats your soul. If you especially if you let it. And I don't know too many cops over a 10 or 15 year career that just don't get affected by some crap. So to answer your question, yeah, I believe it does take a special type of person to be a cop.
So I guess starting out here, you grew up in Atlantic City. What was that like?
I grew up in the era of Nicky Scarfo. Okay. Went to school with his kids. You knew who these people were. Kids are smart. Okay. People don't give kids a lot of credit. Kids will see a person of power walk into a room, and they will turn their eyes and look at that person of power. They might not know exactly what they do or what they've done, but they'll know. It's something that those people give off. So I grew up, late 70s, early 80s. This is the heyday of police work. And you would just hear certain things. You'd hear I played baseball against a kid named Vincent Falcone. His father was Vincent Sr., who they found in a trunk in Margate. He was killed by Phil Leonetti. And, you hear you're sitting in the dugout and you get this his dad was just found in a trunk. But he's just a kid. These are parents. These are all parents of kids that I knew growing up. But when they ran Atlantic City was a hell of a lot safer than it is today. They might have been doing dirty shit on the side, but they protected their own. They protected their city. It was a cool place to grow up. It was that whole area is a great place to grow up. You have the city and then you have the suburbs, right? So you could go ride quads or you could go stare at hookers.
Can you maybe explain what Atlantic City, what the geography actually looks like? Because when people think New Jersey too, me being from New Jersey, I know this, South Jersey and North Jersey are very different. And even what you're highlighting, the actual, it's not just one big marsh or what people think it is, Well,
there was a reason they call it the Garden State. And unfortunately, most people travel up and down the Garden State Parkway and they don't see any garden. You have to go out West Jersey in order to see that. But so I live in North Jersey now, and I have these constant fights with these people. It's pork roll. It's Taylor ham. It's not pork roll. Because everybody thinks once you go over the Raritan Bridge, which is about exit, 120-ish. Once you go over the Raritan Bridge, you're in South Jersey. Well, no, not exactly. You don't start hitting South Jersey till you get below Seaside, exit 80 or something like that. But it's much slower down there. It always was. Because you got to remember, North Jersey people, they're New York City people. I always consider North Jersey people New York City people.
Yeah.
South Jersey people, if you're not working in Atlantic City, you're pumping gas, or it's more like it's more like if you've ever been to the Midwest. You'll have your cities, you'll have your bad areas, but for the most part, it's pretty much wide open space. It was a culture shock when I moved up to North Jersey, and everybody thinks, not everybody, but a lot of people in North Jersey think that people are hillbillies, hicks. It's New Jersey. There's no hicks or hillbillies in New Jersey. I've seen some I've seen some things in South Jersey, but I can show you tons of farms. Like the majority of my family were farmers, believe it or not, but they lived in off the White Horse Pike in Cardiff and Egg Harbor City. It's such a diverse state that, you know, you start moving closer to New York City, you're becoming really congested. It's more city-like. It's more like what you see around here.
Yeah. Like Summit, Morristown,
Right. You start seeing that, but you also start seeing the sections of places that I'd never seen as a kid in South Jersey. You start seeing some houses that are multi-million-dollar houses. You're like, holy shit, what the hell is this? You don't realize that the amount of money in North Jersey, there's more opportunity in North Jersey. There's just nothing for me anymore in South Jersey. I learned that a long time ago. So when I came up to college, I was like, this is my place. Mm-hmm. You know, I still go down occasionally. I was just down there a couple weeks ago. I had to go down to my cousin's place, and it's the same people doing the same stuff. Nobody really advances. There's jobs, but there's not a whole lot of jobs if you're outside of the cities. So there's not a lot of drive. I used to say this when I used to travel. Before I was a cop, I used to travel coast to coast. And I would look at people, I would watch people, how they lived. If you go to, say, Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Dakotas, people don't care. People don't care as much. There's not that drive about, go ahead, forward. As long as they have enough money for their truck, their family, and their house, it's pretty good. Life's pretty good at that point. Simpler life. People in North Jersey, that's why they die of heart attacks too quick.
That's actually a really good way to put it. You know, it's interesting what you're saying. So I grew up in Sparta.
So north. Yeah, around Lake Mohawk area.
Yep. And same type of deal where most people are never going to leave the town. They're going to work in, you know, same businesses their dad, their mom worked, whatever it might be. And they're happy. They're content. And then, you know, we were talking about this earlier. You go up to New York, you know, that area, and it's go, 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 and people are stressed and everyone's trying to make money. But, you know, most of the time they're making all this money, but they don't got any time to actually spend it. You know, they're doing all this crazy shit and they're like, yeah, this is fun. This is great. I'm grinding, I'm working the hours. But, you know, that going out to Indiana recently, it's that slow feeling. A lot of times you feel like that's what we're missing now, you know, with kids and stuff. We don't have that. It's
not a bad way of life. It's really, you know, who's got it right and who's got it wrong, that's open for debate. But in a lot of ways, I'm very jealous of those people with the slower lifestyles. It's not a go, go, go thing. And now with the virtual world, you can pretty much live anywhere and do anything. But that, you know, I don't think I could. I've traveled all over this country, and there's no place that's drawn me away from New Jersey. How does that sound? You know, New Jersey is a cesspool. I was just in Newark Penn Station, and it's like The Walking Dead walking in there. 100%. It's bad.
Can't wait to see the comments on that.
I'm dead serious. So you just go. Anybody who's walked into Newark Penn Station recently, you're like, you're waiting for Rick to come out of the shadows and stab somebody in the head.
100%.
Yeah. But you also, when you go into places like that, it gives you an appreciation for. Even though sometimes we all think our life is tied up and bad and, you know, things are going wrong. How are we going to pay the mortgage? How are we going to do this? Well, at least I'm not sleeping on a bench. So I look for, and I'm that idiot there that's giving them money. They ask me for money, I give them money. Why do I give them money? Because if $20 is going to make them happy at that point, well, give them some happiness. Their life, if you see some of these people, their life's not that happy. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I take a lot of sympathy and empathy on those people. In much the same way that when I was a cop, if I saw a kid that just wanted a candy bar, I'd go buy him a candy bar. Because, you know, listen, I took this job to try to take care of people. So I always continue that. It's something that's in me. Because I guess maybe nobody ever took care of me. Mm. That's might be the way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, that's an area that I want to dive into too. But do you think there was also a part of growing up in AC where you're kind of highlighting that community, that you had empathy for your next door neighbor, maybe something that, you know, we're missing a lot of times. I mean, I can attest to this in North Jersey, the lifestyle, again, when it's go, go, go.
I knew all my neighbors growing up. I knew every single one of them. As a matter of fact, my next door neighbor growing up, Mrs. Reed, was trying to sell her house. I would go steal her signs because I didn't want her to leave. She was a great neighbor. She was awesome. I didn't want her to leave. So behind my house, there was like 15 signs from the realtors. And because every night I'd see it up there, I'd go take it because I didn't want her to go. But that was the neighborhood. That was the community. Everybody sort of looked out for each other. And it's not that way anymore. You're lucky if you know 3 or 4 neighbors. You're lucky in remove yourself 3 or 4 houses up the road. I don't know what their names are. I know them to say hi to them, but that's about it. I think everybody was a lot more engaged and involved.
So you say growing up in that community, and then, one of the things you kind of just highlighted there, something I wanted to dive into is kind of the family relationship. So I guess, what was your family relationship growing up? What was the household like? And, from there, how do you think that started to shape you?
Toxic. Horrible. There wasn't a whole lot of good. My father used to call me the laziest white man ever lived. And I was struck frequently because I always felt that my father didn't succeed, and so he tried to push that on his kids. And if they didn't succeed, we took his wrath. But it would be something small. It would start off with something small. We're playing baseball, and he was always the coach, which used to give me anxiety. I always had sleeping disorders. I always had stomach issues. Well, part of that is from the anxiety of never being allowed to fail or being taught how to fail. Because that's, I teach youth sports now. Show me how a kid loses, and it'll tell me so much more about how a kid what a kid is. Because it's easy to win. Everybody loves winning. So how they act in that. But, you got to be a good winner as well. You can't shove it in their face. But I gravitate towards that kid that is a bad loser. I have one kid on my team. He's a great athlete, horrible loser. And I said, I would love to play against you when I was a kid because I'd be in your head in about 2 seconds. All right. And I'd totally take you out of your game and I'd destroy you. My father, you struck out, you would get yelled at. You would get hit. It was the worst. I couldn't wait to get out. Mm. And if I think back, I've had multiple suicide attempts, but I used to start thinking about it when I was younger. It was a tough place to grow up and you had no support. And getting back to that laziest white man, I've been questioned about that. And I didn't understand it when I was a kid. My father, I didn't realize till I went away to college how racist my family was. There's laziness in every race. I've seen plenty of lazy white people.
Oh, yeah.
And I've seen plenty of lazy black people and plenty of lazy Spanish people. But I've also seen really great Spanish people, really great black people, really great. I was on a phone with a guy I was hired in the police department with who is like the black version of me. And he's my brother, and I'll kill for him, and I'll die for him. But when you're in a household where you're taught that somebody with a different color is such a bad person, you just start believing it because they're your parents. They know. So you start bringing about that stuff. And I've spent the better portion of my life trying to make amends for things that I did. I was on the phone with a guy who was my high school quarterback, black kid. And in the middle of class, one time, I called him out loud the N-word. And he didn't deserve it. He didn't treat me badly. Why did I do that? So we had always stayed somewhat connected, but this conversation, I told you I went down to South Jersey. Well, he was a phone call, and we were trying to get together. And I said, hey, listen, I don't know if you remember me saying that to you. Because I believe if I was a jerk enough to say it to your face, I better be man enough to step up and really try to make amends and look you in the eye while I'm doing it. Yeah, I said it. As an adult, I'm really sorry I said it. It was done out of ignorance. There is no excuse for that. Turns out he didn't even remember it. And he's like, man, as long as you had my back on the football field. And I said, I always had your back on the football field. But that wasn't the point. I said those things because I wasn't all right at home. I mean, it reared its head earlier on in my life too. There was, in my grade school, there was this Puerto Rican kid. And I'll say his name because he's one of my very dear friends now. His name was Jay Aponte. His real name was Jesus Aponte. And Jay was heavier. He didn't come from money. So his clothes weren't the fashion. Neither did I. I was poor too. And Jay was the nicest kid in the world. But for some reason, I tortured him. Why? I feel horrible about it to this day. But from 6th to 8th grade, I made this kid's life a living hell. I mean, we used to have something called the J game. You would get certain points for either kicking or punching him. And you're talking early 80s. So the teachers really didn't
give a shit.
He didn't really do much. And he never fought back until he fought back a couple times, but nothing to that extent. So he leaves school in 8th grade and I felt rotten. Like I instantly felt rotten for the way that I did it. But I just, I didn't change my ways. Once I graduated high school and I went to college, I felt so bad about the way I treated this kid. I looked for this kid for 30 years. And, this before social media, before any of that stuff. So it's really hard to find. Plus his name's Jesus Aponte. And
there's a couple of those.
There's a few of those. Yeah. There's a few of those. Until one day on Facebook, I would just go through the list. I would do like 10 a day. I'd message them, get no answer from most of them. Finally, hey, did you go to this school around this time? And he's like, yeah. And I said, look, and it's him. I said, look, I don't know if you remember me or not, but I really treated you poorly and I want to apologize. So we get on the phone together and I say the same thing. I said, he lives in New York. Turns out he's a cop too, which is kind of funny. This was after I retired. And he turns to me and he says, bro, I forgive you. We were kids. I said, come on, man. Just call me an asshole. Call me something. I was a big, giant asshole. And then I explained to him the backstory. And to this day, since we reconnected, Jay has been like a brother to me. Now, here's how stupid I was as a kid. I should have been friends with Jay, besides the people I was friends with, who were criminals. My friends were criminals. I should have been hanging out with him because he's a genuinely good guy. And I tell that to my kids. I said, I was so stupid that I lost out on a 30-year friendship. We don't get many friends in this world. As you move on in your life, you're going to be able to count your friends on one hand if you're lucky. And Jay is one of those now, but it took me 30 years to find him and reconnect with him and really try to put, I was more affected at the time as an adult. I was more affected by what I did to him than he was. But as a kid, think about this. He would go, he had a safe space at home, but the anxiety of going to school, God, all he wants to do is go to school and be a kid. But thankfully, I'm not dead yet, and I can make amends for those little transgressions that I did. And I'll never forget when I was in college, I get a girlfriend and she's Puerto Rican. And knowing that my family's racist and I don't really care for my family, I bring this girl home. And while we're at the dinner table, she goes, oh yeah, I got some black in me too. And I go, and I look at her and they just start smiling. And I look at my parents' face and they wanted nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. This girl. And then of course, when she left, this girl's not for you. Well, why isn't she good for me? I like her. She treats me well. So what's the big deal? So, it's hard to erase the memories of my childhood. I have, and I started remembering a lot of things in my 40s, some really bad things that I'm trying to move past, but I can't move past them. I have to deal with them and I have to overcome them because they'll never go away. I just buried that stuff down so deep. How many times did I go to bed crying when I was a kid, thinking that I'm worthless, that I'm no good, I was fat, I was ugly, I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, and the damage that parents do on their kids, I think that is possibly the worst thing that could ever be done, and I'm counting in there the horrors of adulthood. Because those things never get erased. And being a father, man, I'd die. There's two kids that I would die for. Mm-hmm. I'd give up my life willingly, happily. And I put this like this. So when my kids were little, there was a guy, and he was always drunk or high or whatever. He would speed up and down my street. I lived on a little small 25-mile-an-hour street. So I would tell him, I grabbed him, lived right around the corner. I said, hey, slow down. Slow down. That's all I want you to do is slow down. He would keep doing it until one day I stood in front of his truck and I stopped him. I said, look, I love my kids more than I love my freedom. I will fucking kill you. And I'll go sit in a jail cell happily. All you got to do is slow down to avoid this. Thankfully, he never drove down my street again. Thankfully. Because, you know, I'm a peaceful person and I'm a kind person until it's time not to be kind. Mm-hmm. That's something my grandfather taught me. He goes, you're going to know when it's time to no longer be kind. It's inbred in you being a Donaldson. And he was right. And I try to, I always look out for that on my kids. Like, you're going to know. Don't be mean, be kind. And I try to teach them those hard lessons that I learned. So, not my favorite place in the world. I don't speak to my family. I don't speak to my father's passed. I don't speak to my brother or my mother. And because there's nothing there for me.
So you highlighted your grandfather there. Did you have a closer relationship with him, or just, I guess, trying to understand where it stemmed from? Because you mentioned your father kind of feeling like a failure, so trying to push failure against you guys. Do you know where that stemmed from, or was it the grandfather? I've
done a dive into that. I don't know. Like, I really don't know. My grandfather was the man. My grandfather was everything to me. He taught me how to be a man. He taught me everything about being a good person. My grandfather used to say to me, don't ever leave a room and allow people the opportunity to call you an asshole. I've failed at that many times. But I try. I try every single day. If I can be half the man that my grandfather was, his name was James Alexander Donaldson. My youngest son, his name is James Alexander Donaldson. Because that guy had to leave school at 8th grade because his father died in 1928. And he had 9 brothers and sisters, and raise them, because he was one of the oldest ones, had to raise them and never complained. With an 8th grade education, he was the smartest man I ever knew in my life, because every day he would do a crossword puzzle. And I didn't understand it. I just thought it was him keeping busy.
Yeah.
That was his education. But his education was a school of hard knocks. You know, he was the most interesting man in the world. Like, he could have done Dos Equis commercials. I'm sure he had his moments, but to me, he was God. To me, he was everything to me. And, you know, you ever get that question that anybody living or dead you'd like to have a conversation with? He's my number one. I just want 5 minutes with him. 5 more minutes. He died in November 19th, 1996, and that's still a tough day for me. You know, 28 years later, I don't think I'll ever get over his death.
So that conversation piece is interesting. If you did have the opportunity for that, what do you think you'd say right now?
I would tell him how much I loved him and how grateful I am that he gave to me what he gave me. I only got to spend 22 years of my life with him. 22 years is more than most people get to spend with their grandparents. I'm grateful for that 22 years. But when he left, it was like everything became hollow. It's like it's kind of like when you lose your faith in God, which incidentally I did lose my faith in God. When you lose your faith in God, then the world becomes black and hopeless. And that's what happened on November 19th, 1996. I spiraled. Like I fell apart. That would be an interesting conversation with him, because there's some questions that I would ask him that I didn't get a chance to ask him. I would ask him, did you ever have any time of doubt? Did you ever have any, I would also like to ask him, how the hell did your son get so screwed up? Mm-hmm. When did you start seeing this? Maybe I could get some answers that way, but I don't think I'd really waste my time with that. I just want to cherished that every second of that time with him, just asking him things I never got to ask him. You know, he lost his brother when his brother was 16 years old. You know, what did that do to you? Tell me some stories about your father that you remember. The guy died in 1928. I want to hear them. You know, they say when somebody dies, a library burns to the ground. I keep a lot of that library alive, but there are some that's gone to history because there's very few people around anymore that grew up with him. There's nobody around that grew up with him. Actually, no, that's not true. There is one guy, and I when I went down to South Jersey, I actually got to sit with him. Guy's 99 years old. Remembers my grandfather as a young man anyway, and so so instead of having that 5 minutes with my grandfather, I just sat there and picked his brain for 3 hours. Guy was probably like, Jesus Christ, man, get this kid away from me. It's a nice question to ask. Unfortunately, when I go meet my maker, I'll have that opportunity.
Of that conversation. So you spoke about this in the Soft White Underbelly interview, which, when we talked on the phone, I said I've watched that over and over a number of times. It was amazing. And it kind of carries into what we're talking about now. But you said, you know, throughout middle school, high school, a lot of the stuff that happened at home, you struggled to find an identity. So can you speak to that?
So your identity should be something that never moves, never shakes, because everything else will go away at some point. Cops have a bad problem with this. They create their identity in police work. Well, you're not going to be a cop forever. It's going to eventually end. For whatever you do in life, you're trying to find yourself. I tried to do that throughout my whole life. I either tried to find, you know, be the smart kid, the tough kid, the bad kid, the biggest drug user, or you know, whatever I could do to be noticed, I guess, to be heard. You know, and it still carries over to some point to this day. I mean, we're podcasters. That's all we want to do is be heard.
Yeah.
But every time you try something and it doesn't work, you try something and it doesn't work, you try something and it doesn't work. One thing I do know is as I got older, I really enjoyed helping people. I really enjoyed giving other people a little bit of peace, even though I was in pieces. And that's so I sort of took that into police work. So I was a little misguided when I took my identity and became a cop. I was a little misguided. It wasn't about being a cop. It was about doing something for the better good, something better for humanity. But in high school, geez, I stole everything that wasn't nailed down. I really did. I stole a hot tub once. This is ridiculous. It was a pre-construction house, or just the frame was up, but the hot tub was in there. So me and my friends, I had a truck. Me and my friends go in there. We cut the pipes, and we're in there for like 3 hours moving this hot tub. What the hell are we going to do with a hot tub? We don't have plumbing to hook it up. It's just going to be a big bathtub. And we put it in the back of my truck. We drive down the street and we hide it in the marshes. We go back the next day to go get it, like we're going to do something with it, like we're going to sell it or whatever. And somebody stole the hot tub from us. So it's like someone
stole the hot tub.
Someone stole I think it was one of my friends. He probably just went back there and took it. But hey, you can't trust a thief, right? There is no honor amongst thieves. So I stole everything because I didn't have whatever I was lacking at home. I figured that's going to fill that hole because I had this big giant hole inside of me. And whatever I did, I was trying to fill that hole. You know, I was trying to spackle it up the best way I knew how with whatever tools that I had. But I didn't have any tools, so I did the best I could. You know, I would get into tons of fights because I thought, hey, if people saw me as a tough guy, maybe that can be my identity. That's what I'll hold on to. You find out all it does is get you in trouble, you know. Then there's the stealing things, and then there was a time I got heavy into drugs, mostly just smoking weed, but other things as well. I get known as a pothead, you know. Well, although I did go to a Grateful Dead concert, and I got some of the best advice. This is back when Jerry Garcia was still alive. I got some of the best advice I've ever gotten in my life at a Grateful Dead concert. I was tripping. I was not having a good trip. And the guy, this old deadhead in front of me, turns around and he sees me not having a good time and he goes, just hang on, man. And what a great metaphor for life. When stuff gets tough, just hang on, man. Hold on, pain ends, hope, right?
Yeah.
And I see this throughout my life, right? I see these things come into my periphery throughout my life. I just wasn't smart enough to see them. I'm trying to get better at seeing them now. And I do. Like, I am much better at seeing these things now. I become a cop, and I really loved that job. I really did. I was making a difference. There was people who were looking at me that, when they have nowhere else to look, they look at you and they were like, all right, what do I do? They're coming to you for help. And it felt really good to be able to help somebody. You leave a job where you really made a difference in somebody's life, and you're like, yeah, well, you know what, that I like that. I think I want to keep doing this. And then one day that's over. My job ended July 10th, 2013. I went to work one day and I didn't go to work anymore. Now what do I do? My identity was crushed. The only thing that should be your primary identity is whatever. Like my primary identity now is my higher power. I know that's never going anywhere. And underneath there, I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a coach. I work my regular job. I'm a podcaster. All that stuff goes underneath, because when that stuff goes away, that one will still stay there.
So what would you say to those that are maybe in a similar position currently and to one that you grew up in, that are struggling to find that identity, whether it's they're going down the wrong path and, maybe coming to school being aggressive or getting into drugs, whatever it might be? What would be something that you could say that this is the right way to find your identity?
There is no right way. You just got to have your eyes opened. So I was a bully. All right. There's no two ways about it. There's no good word to say. I was a bully. But I was tough. So what's a bully want? A bully doesn't want to have anybody fight back. If somebody were to fight back against me, I'm going to leave them alone. There's no right answer to that. There is no way to find your identity. I'll be 50 this year. I'm pretty sure I got it, but I've been sure before. I always said when I was 13 years old, I was as smart as I was ever going to be. And then when I was 20 years old, I realized how stupid I was at 13, but I got it all together at 20 years old. And then I hit 30, same thing happened. And I hit 40. After I hit 40, I kind of said, okay, you're just never going to figure it out. Just slow your roll, let it come to you. The main thing with people who are being aggressive in school, people never used to ask the question, well, why is that kid being aggressive? Why is that person, we do it with adults too. That person's just a drunk. Well, why are they a drunk? I had an uncle, Uncle Duke, right? He was a prisoner of war in World War II for 27 months. I was told from a little kid, he's just a drunk. He's a drunk. He likes to fight. He's a drunk. Nobody asked why he was a drunk. Nobody asked what was going on in his head. And when you find out some of his backstory, oh, yeah, guy had post-traumatic stress. Not only did he get out of prisoner of war camp after the war ended, he re-enlisted and went back in the military. And ended up going to Korea. So the people around that person being aggressive, they need to look a little closer, because we're obligated to take care of our fellow man. And if you're not taking care of somebody next to you or a teacher or somebody else, I'm not saying be heavy-handed with these people. Bring it to somebody's attention, because the way they're doing it now, it's so wrong. My son gets into a fight in 6th grade, punches a kid in the nose 4 times. My son is a gentle giant, so whatever it is, and I know the kid he got into the fight with, I'm like, all right, kind of makes sense. Here's what the schools will tell you. So here's what I did. I knew this happened. I knew he was going to take a rip. I found out what happened. I said, well, your big mistake was doing it in front of cameras. That was stupid. Other than that, he really didn't get in any trouble. So I got the other kid who I coach and him. I got a hold of his parents. I said, okay, let's take him out to pizza place, get him a slice of pizza. I said, you guys go over in that corner right there and work it out. If you guys fight. At least we're here to referee it. And that's what they did. And guess what? It was over. There's no problem. I bring him back to school that Monday, and they hand me this contract that they want me to sign. They go, you got to sign this. Both kids got to stay away from each other. They're not to talk to each other. If they see each other in the hallway, they got to avoid each other. I said, I ain't signing this. I'll tell you what, roll it up, stick it up your ass, because I'm not signing this. I said, I've done your job. The reason that the problem is happening right now in school, and kids are doing some of the most horrible things, school shootings and all that stuff, because they don't know how to resolve their conflicts. When I was younger, now I'm not saying it's better. If you had a problem with another person, you went outside, you argued, or you fought, but at the end of the day, it was done. There was no animosity. We released. And I grew up also in a time where a lot of kids used to go hunting after school. So they'd bring their guns in, check them in, and leave.
They had that in Jersey.
Yeah, in Jersey. Check your guns in. And then after school, go, you bring it in unloaded. It happened a lot. So the guns were there. The guns have always been in school, but there was never this problem because they're told to bury it deep. And what's going to happen? Eventually, a volcano under pressure is going to explode. And that's what happens with these kids. They explode because the schools aren't teaching them conflict resolution. I teach my kids conflict resolution. I teach my personal kids, kids I coach, I teach them conflict resolution. All right, let's sit and talk about it. Let's get it out. You got a problem with this football player? All right, one-on-one, let's go. Get it out. And 9 times out of 10, I would say 99% of the time, the problem is squashed, it's cured, and they move forward. And they have a little bit more respect for one another. Right now, I don't think anybody has too much respect for anyone.
No, I mean, coming from like an MMA jiu-jitsu background, I mean, that's one of the biggest things you learn when you do that. Once you learn how to fight, people are like, oh, you want to fight everybody. It's like, I want to fight nobody.
Exactly.
Because once you have respect for the other person. You actually want to talk stuff through. But we've also seen, if you're a UFC fan or anybody who watches any type of boxing, whatever it might be, they'll say some of the most heinous stuff to each other. The meanest stuff, making fun of dead family members, really dark stuff. After they get in that ring, and they beat the shit out of each other for 25 minutes.
Jake Paul might have screwed up a little bit.
With the Mike Tyson thing?
Yeah, he made fun of Mike Tyson's dead daughter.
Oh, I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think it was a big mistake. Mike Tyson is a savage.
I mean, yeah, that's like, okay. I did not know that. That is a big mistake. Because, I mean, I felt like there was going to be a nice Tyson going in there. But Tyson can also...
He can turn it on.
He can turn it on.
So I'm a big MMA fan, and I always like Joe Rogan's comment that says it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Mm-hmm.
And doing jiu-jitsu, and I've been tapped out by guys who are 140 pounds, and I've tapped out guys that are 300 pounds. It's on any given day, you make a mistake, somebody pulls the right move, all of a sudden your arm's twisted around or you're folded up in a pretzel. And it's the great equalizer. But with Brazilian jiu-jitsu specifically, what it teaches you is confidence. You're like, I don't have to fight. I don't have anything to prove. I know I can do this stuff. So let me try to handle it peacefully. I've always said that cops should be at least a purple belt.
Yeah.
They really should be a purple belt because knowing that you have those tools, that skill set in you, makes you a different person. It's like, hey, listen, I just had it in the gym the other day. Like, I'm a magnet for this stuff, okay? And everybody says it's the way I look, but they're body shaming me. I hate to tell you. They're body shaming me. I was on a machine, and I'm working out with my wife. I'm on a machine, and a guy jumps on there. I'm like, hey, bro, we got a couple more sets left. And then we only got 2 sets, and we'll be done. He walks away and comes back as I'm doing a superset and says, you and I are going to go outside and fight. Who, me? Like, and that happens. That's happened a couple times in the gym. I'm not mean. Listen, I'm just in there to get in and get out. Leave me alone. I don't talk to anybody. I'm not a 3-hour gym
what's up,
guy.
though. I mean, which is what you should do as a person.
And all I kept telling the guy is like, you're going to hurt yourself. Keep going and you're going to hurt yourself. because eventually I'll get to that point. If I was in my early 20s and he came, I would have just thrown a plate at him. I would have hit him over the head with something, and because I didn't care. Because when I was a kid, my life was pretty worthless. I didn't care about any consequences, nor were there many consequences to be had. I would have been thought action without even thinking. But now, I got a lot more to lose, and most of the time, I'll turn it around on him now. I'll go up to him and I'll say, "Hey, bro, God bless you." And then I'll walk out, and I guarantee they'll be thinking in their head going, "Why the hell did he just say that? What does that mean? Why?" And all of a sudden I rent space in their head. But yeah, jiu-jitsu, it's the great equalizer.
Yeah, well, what you said there was police as well, like being a purple belt minimum. It's like people don't understand how hard it is to control another human being. People underestimate that because they see it in UFC and all this, and they're like, well, it probably isn't that hard. When another human being doesn't want to be tied down, it's very hard to tie him down. But when you get to the purple belt, which for those that don't know, it's like white, blue, purple. Purple's, you're basically a black belt without really having your game craft at that point. You know all the specifics. There's very small nuances that you can do to make sure you can hold someone down. And I always say the same thing. It's like if cops had that, a lot of situations where we see where, there's a very aggressive person, whether they're big or small, whatever it might be. I'm like, if they just put him in a Kimura and held him there, it's like they would have been actually just hold the person down.
You remember the first person you got in an arm bar or a Kimura or an ankle lock or something, and you walk out of there going, "Oh my God, and you just knew it. Like you practiced it so many times, it just became muscle memory, and you just did it, and you're like, "Oh my God." You're like, "Wow, this is some real powerful stuff." Not to mention, I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is probably the best workout you could ever have in your entire life.
I have done countless conditioning from playing college sports that I'm like, this is the toughest thing I've ever done. Mm-hmm. My first day of jiu-jitsu, funny story, I show up to the no-gi class, and it's the comp class. And I was like,
everybody's a little slippery.
Yeah, I walk in, my black belt coach, he's just like, "This is your first day?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're going to have a tough day." This is, and it's immediately right in there with some of the killers we have in our gym. And I literally just remember getting off the mat after the rolling session, and I was dizzy and I was getting so close to throwing up. Never in my life ever thrown up from anything from conditioning or all that. Jiu-jitsu,
I was just happy that my ears stayed somewhat normal.
I'm knock on wood for that before I say anything.
There's always those savages in the gym that their ears just are mangled.
At my gym, Kamal Kashoris, who's fought in the UFC, fought Khabib.
He fought Khabib.
And that's how, scary. And he's, a master in Sambo, black belt in judo, black belt in jiu-jitsu, master in like kickboxing or whatever because in Russia they call it like master. And he's just got the big old ears. And man, when you go against him, it's like going against someone that's 500 pounds of pure muscle, and he moves as quickly. It's like, Jesus Christ. He's a scary guy.
When I coach football, my specialty is the offensive line and defensive line. I have all my kids, your homework is to go home and watch sumo wrestling. Because sumo wrestlers, people think they're just big fat Asian guys. Mm-hmm. They're not. They're athletes. And they know how to work your body mechanics against you and their body mechanics for you in such a perfect move, which is, it's just all pass blocking. Mm-hmm. That's all it is. You're just keeping everybody off. And they become better people. And I do this one drill where they get in a circle, and I call it the sumo drill. It's one person rushes in, and your job is just to arrest them from getting out of the circle. And thankfully, it's been very successful. But yeah, it's that cross training, right? So you're doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because you're cross training on how to become a better police officer and how to control people a little bit better. But it also gives you it's the confidence. I think it's the confidence, especially with young kids. Yeah, it's the free flow and the ability to know you stay so calm in situations. Mm-hmm. Like I was explaining this to somebody this weekend. We were talking about fighting, and I'm like, you guys don't understand the complexities of fighting, like the difference between someone that knows what they're doing. Striking is a great example. How it's such a chess match. Like people don't understand the lead foot dynamics, how footwork works in terms of like what you're going to create your angles with, where you're going to get punches in. They think you're just there, just throwing punches. Mm-hmm. And it's such a chess match. And I was explaining is that
when you've been punched in the face tons of times, if you watch slow motion things from UFC or any boxing, they'll be throwing a punch and that guy knows he's not in range. And the glove will come right here and there will not be an expression on his face. He's still thinking, what am I doing next? When you do some of those live action martial arts, jiu-jitsu is very live action, but if you get, you go hard spar kickboxing, when you actually get in the situation, you're as calm as can be.
I saw that so I know Jerry Cooney. Okay. Jerry Cooney was one of the best at that. So not only is the guy 6'7", he could snap a punch and his range was so perfect. He knew exactly where he had to be. So at the end of that punch, when it's at its most powerful, when he snaps it, he'd catch you in the right spot. And the first time I met the guy, he punched me in the ribs and he bruised my ribs. Like, he's 65 years old. He bruised my ribs. I was like, you do that again, old man, I'm gonna break your hip. But he's a big ball buster. And but that's the difference between, you'll find out if you, like I boxed from time I was like 13 to 23. You'll find out the difference between a pro and an amateur. I had the opportunity to spar because they were always looking for heavyweights with some guys who were pro or going pro or something like that. And you find out real quick that, yeah, I'm a sparer. Like, I'm a journeyman. I'm not these guys because they're real practitioners. They're real craftsmen.
So let me ask you that. I'm happy you brought that up because that's actually the next question I was going to ask is when you were growing up, so you did boxing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people always talk about this where it's really good. I mean, we were just saying this. It's really good for kids to get into martial arts, teaches them a lot of different things that they can use throughout their life. With everything that was happening, do you think you were able to appreciate that when you were boxing? Like, what do you think the impact was at that point in your life?
I don't think I was taught properly. I was trying to become tougher. I thought it was something that I just thought tough people did. But there's two people, you get into a gym and you start throwing punches with somebody, you're going to find out real quick whether this is for you or it's not for you. You may get punched in the face and say, that's it, I'm out. I don't like this. And then there's other times where you start looking at the craft of it. I just think it was a release a lot too. I got to go in there and legally fight and sort of get some of this aggression out. I was getting beat up at home, so now I can go take that out on other people. But that's not what it's about. It's really not what it's about. It's pugilism. Pugilism is the art of jockeying for position and making sure your footwork's good and getting a workout and throwing the punch and being able to take the punch and keep your calm and remembering all your mechanics and how to throw your hips. Looking at it through 50-year-old eyes, I wish I would have taken the art a little bit more serious and just getting in there and banging. Mm-hmm. You used to remember the old tough man competitions? Just two barroom brawlers getting in there, and they look ridiculous. A real boxer would go in there and take them apart. I think the only one that got any distance was Butterbean. But Butterbean was a lot more skilled than you think he is. That guy could punch.
He also had a chin for days.
He did. He had a chin, but he could move. For a big guy, he could really move. But then you go up against, like when I was in the police academy, a guy who taught unarmed self-defense was a guy named Bobby Casper. And Bobby's like 160 pounds. He was a tunnel rat in Vietnam, older guy. His footwork he used to do Filipino knife fighting. I can't remember what the name of it is. He used to go to the Philippines. Dangerous, like super dangerous guy. But I worked with Bobby before. He knew me before I was a cop. And I did footwork with him. So he calls me up and he's like, throw a punch at me. So you like half-heartedly throw a punch at him. He goes, no, I know you know how to punch. Throw a punch at me. So I'm jockeying around. I throw one punch and he's standing behind me with his knee on my calf and I'm screaming. He was so fast. And if I put a little bit of time into learning what he knows, just learning some of it, I would have made him for a much better boxer. But I'm going to stand toe-to-toe with you and see who has the better chance.
Stand and bang.
Yeah.
So I guess continuing with childhood growing up, one of the things I think you said was really interesting was immediately when Jesus, if I'm pronouncing it right, moved from in 8th grade, you immediately started kind of feeling that regret.
I did, although I didn't really fix any of the behavior.
And then in high school, again, you were having some stuff kind of going on, whether it was hanging with the wrong crowd or, what you were talking about. quarterback earlier, like just some issues, but you're still highlighting it. Even in the moment, you kind of had that voice in the back of the head, and you're like, "This is wrong." When do you think you started really kind of shifting out of that phase and then start moving towards where you got later in life, where you wanted to help people?
I left for college. I was 17 when I went into college. That's the only thing that got me through, is because I didn't work very hard in school. And some classes, I'll tell you right now, I scammed through. So Notre Dame, right? I went to Catholic school. I hated biology. Hated it. Didn't want to do any work. But my sister, Mary Dominic, loved Notre Dame football. So instead of going home and doing my homework, I watched Notre Dame football. Hey, sister, did you see the game this weekend? Yeah. I ended up getting a B in that class. I don't think I did anything. So I scammed my way through that stuff. But when I went away to college and I was able to separate myself from that toxic environment and really be out on my own, my life changed. It really did change. You know, I did my laundry, folded my clothes, made my bed every single day. And I just got my life, which was chaos. I started bringing some order into it. And it's what made my life make sense. Unfortunately, there's some downsides to it, because I think it gave me OCD. You know, I have to, like, my clothes have to be folded as soon as the dryer's done. You know, certain things have to be put away in a certain order. I thrive on order because I didn't have any order. And when I went away to college, stuff started clicking for me. You know, you're around a lot more of a diverse group of people, and some people who are opening your eyes to things, because you're starting to see the hypocrisy in all of it. You're starting to see that those things that you've been told as a child aren't true. And when holes started getting poked into that very thin balloon, when you start getting some holes in it, then all of a sudden the balloon just deflates. And that's kind of what happened to me. You know, my friends were black, white, brown. And these are the people that I hung around. I had a girlfriend who was Puerto Rican that I mentioned. She opened my eyes to a lot of different things, the diversity portion of it. Spent some time in the inner city because she was from Newark. And I'm like, wow, you know what? People are just trying to live their best lives. And I sort of I was happy to drop that because I didn't need it anymore. It was just another part of a portion of my identity that I realized was totally wrong. I don't need this. Get this out of your life, because the more you hate, the more you're going to hate. And that's if I had to pick a point, it's when I went away to college.
Mm-hmm. When did you end up because you spoke about this a little bit, you know, you stopped communicating with the family and such. Was that the period where it kind of started? Maybe not directly, but, you know, slowly kind of tuning it out?
Yeah, because I didn't have I was starting to become so different than them. I was starting to find my way in this world. And they're still stuck in this same type of behavior, which wasn't good behavior. I don't think there's anybody on earth that says you should hate somebody because of the way they look, or because of their religion, or because of the way they dress. I don't think that's right in any world. And that's one of the things. So my grandfather, you know, getting back to that, I would say some awful things around him, racist things. And I think and he would say, stop. And I think I said something about Jewish people once. I think I remember he fought against Adolf Hitler. And he says, don't you ever say that again. You have no idea what these people have been through. And I just and I think that was the last time I ever said anything like that in front of him. So he started recognizing that stuff and chopped me off from it. But people are just trying to live their best life. That's all they're trying to do. No matter what color, what race, what creed, you're just trying to do the best you can. And then when you have children, most of them are trying to do the best for their children. And I know some people in the inner city that are criminals. I know some people that are in the city that are great people. I know the difference between them. They had a really good foundation. So that's what I've always found out, that my foundation, you know, I kept trying to build these things on top of a broken foundation, and it just collapsed. Every single time I got something decent, it just collapsed, and I'd have to rebuild from the start. And I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. Every time I did go down there, I couldn't wait to leave because it felt dirty. It felt disgusting to me. I knew I was never going to return to South Jersey.
So let me ask, did you grow up religious? Because you mentioned at some point right before going into school and stuff that you kind of lost that way with theirs. So was there growing up religious or?
Not overly religious. They were CEO religion, Christmas and Easter only, right? But I was made to go to Sunday school and stuff. And see, half my family is Catholic. The other half is Protestant. Because when my great-grandfather died, who was Protestant Irish, my great-grandmother was Catholic Irish. And that's the whole reason that that's a really bad mixture, especially in the 20s. So half my family's Catholic, the other half is Protestant. I grew up on the Protestant side. I did feel tied to my faith. I did. I read the Bible numerous times. And by the time I got to college and I started turning my life around, I actually went into college for theological studies. I figured, you know what? I can become a pastor. I can start on that path to redeeming myself. You know, I've already fallen. In my opinion, I had already fallen because there's the birth, there's the fall, the redemption, and the restoration. 4 cycles of life. Very few people ever get to the restoration. Usually you get restored after you die. But fewer of them actually get to the redemption stage. I figured I already fell. So it's time for me to go to redemption. And then I took this class. It's called Bible is Literature by a guy named, the professor was Dr. John Becker. And he was a ex-Jesuit priest. And when you start reading the Bible as a book, it is so violent. So one of the stories, I'm a big King David guy. Love King David because he's just a man. Like I identified with him. He's a man with all these faults, but he did such great things. Well, Saul was trying to kill David, sends him out into the wilderness and says, you have to prove to me that you killed 100 Philistines. And the way you're going to prove it to me is you're going to bring me their foreskins. I don't think anybody's cutting off foreskins. I think they're just going to take the whole damn thing. So David comes back in there into the square with 1,000 Philistine foreskins. And then all the women start immediately screaming, oh my God, Egod the Philistine is dead. So they could all see what this guy looked like from the size of his dick. And I'm listening to this book, and it's every time that God doesn't like somebody, he smites them, he destroys them, and I'm like, this is awful. This is not a religion that I want to be involved in. So I totally turned my back on God, on Jesus. Totally turned my back. I didn't want to have anything to do with it, and which gave me permission to do anything I wanted. And it didn't turn out so well.
Where did you go from there?
Then I decided I'm just going to play football, go get my teaching degree, and I'll be a teacher. That's what I'll do. I'll sculpt young minds because that's what you're going to do as a preacher anyway. You're going to sculpt minds. So now I'll be a teacher. I'll be a English literature teacher. I'll go sculpt young minds. And I still am able to raise the next generation. And that's what I did, and that's what I worked towards. But I fought hard for it because I saw all my other friends partying. They were going into New York City. Like, I think one night this is back when the Tunnel and the Limelight were still around. We go in there, and then somehow we ended up like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning in Harlem. Somebody's scoring cocaine in the car. And I get this wave of panic. Like, if I get caught with cocaine, I'm never going to be a teacher. But thankfully I didn't. I was able to get out. I taught high school for 1 year, and I hated it. I hated the other teachers. I love the kids. I hated the other teachers. The way they spoke about the kids was god awful. These are people that have just been so jaded by the system and these kids that they develop this real disgust for the profession. It's a noble profession. Like I get my hats off to anybody who's a teacher. And there's still some really good teachers. But I remember looking at myself in the mirror one day, and I was unhealthy. I wasn't working out all that much. I was overweight, And I said, there is no way that I'm doing this for 35 years. There's just no way. I can't do this. Went in the next day. I only taught high school for a year. Here's my resignation. I'm done. But I always tell people that I left teaching because it got too dangerous and I became a cop.
Yeah, I can believe that. With some of the kids can get crazy. What were some of the things they were saying that made you feel uncomfortable? Because that is interesting, because I think there is a massive difference between a good teacher and a bad teacher. And a bad teacher oftentimes can have like a very severe impact on the kid, whether it's their confidence, their, willingness to actually learn, like all those different items. So what were some of those things, and why do you think it was so impactful on you?
I've heard many kids get called shitheads. This kid's going to grow up to pump gas. They just look down on these kids. And you know what? I have to say, if a kid, most of the time, this is not 100% of the time, but most of the time when a kid starts going south, it's the teacher's fault. I really do. I put this onus on the teachers. And I learned this very early on. When I was a brand new teacher, we were reading The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. And you're idealistic. You're going to change these kids' minds. You're going to make them love literature. Marriage in Heaven and Hell by William Blake was written in like 1650. And in there, they have something called the Proverbs of Hell. And all these little pieces of advice that are universal, that were true 400 years ago and they're still true now. Like the busy bee has no time for sorrow. The cutworm forgives the plow. One law for the lion and the ox is oppression. So I gave this task to these kids. They're high school seniors. I said, if you were able to talk to somebody 400 years in the future and you thought you had some advice that you really got it figured out, that you think would be universal to them and applicable to their life, what do you think it would be? That's a really tall task. I didn't realize how tall of a task that was. And most people did their due diligence and they did a good job. But I had these two kids. Now, mind you, I'm 22 years old. These two kids. One of them wrote, if you play with it, you'll go blind. And if you shake more than twice, you're playing with yourself. And I look at the kids, young teacher. I smile. It's good, but you got to do it over. They weren't wrong. I was wrong. I gave the wrong direction. I should have said nothing dirty. Mm-hmm. I wasn't specific enough. And those kids, see, the kids like that I can work with because those kids think outside the box. They're smart. They're just using it the wrong way. But if you can channel that and you can mold that and get them on the straight and narrow, boy, these kids are going to do something really great. And one of them actually did. The other one, I think, is pumping gas. Last I saw. But it's on the teachers to do this. They have a tough job, and they have all these different kids going in there. The classroom sizes are going up. But you need to inspire kids. And if you're not doing your job.
Do you think that because of your background growing up, where you did and how you did, that you had the ability to emphasize with these kids and actually understand that what they might be going through isn't necessarily just what's seen in the classroom and that maybe these other teachers couldn't?
I think it helped me out to identify the kids who were in a similar situation than I was. Why isn't this kid doing their work? I hear this now in my current life. I hear it all the time where somebody who had gone through something really bad, they stopped doing their work in school, they're failing out, they went from A's to F's. That's the teacher's job to sit there and identify that stuff. Why is this kid doing this? This was a really good student. Something's going on. Something's wrong. I see it on the football field all the time. Kid comes in 1 year, he's fine. Next year, okay, well, then you find out his parents are getting a divorce. All right, well, listen, that's my job to find that stuff out because that's all I'm doing is I'm teaching these kids. My job is to figure out what's going on in their life, to not really be intrusive, but to try to find a way to motivate and work around. We're failing our kids right now in the school because they're just pushing them through like cattle. It's not a good way to live. I fear for the kids now.
No, I don't disagree. I think COVID was kind of a really big impact too, because it seems like COVID, like there's a whole idea where I was friends with somebody who was teaching at this level, and they're saying that a lot of the kids at that age group are coming in with no social skills because it's like the most important phase, second to like fourth grade to develop those, and they were just at home. And then,
which was a joke.
Yeah.
I watched it. The online instruction was a joke. One of my sons, his teacher retired right after the year because she wasn't technologically advanced enough to do the Zoom meetings. But they'd be on for like 2 to 4 hours, and the rest of the day they'd be doing whatever they wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And so what was more harmful, COVID or bringing these kids out of school? My opinion, I'm not a doctor, but taking these kids out of school did much more damage.
Yeah, it's one of those things that 5-10 years from now, when they're high school or college age, like the impact's going to be, we'll be able to measure it. And it's one of those things where I look back and be like, man, a whole couple of generation there, they're just socially inept, or socially they just never got to develop the same. And it's like, and then how does that compound from there? Because, it's usually like a pipeline. It goes from, the high school interacting with the younger kids, and it just goes down from there. So it is interesting to see, because I do think
we need an EMP to get rid of all the electronics and just let them be kids for a year.
I do agree.
Just for a year. I think that's a sacrifice worth taking.
So transitioning from teaching, you ended up moving into becoming a cop. Can you speak about what the process was there?
I was very fortunate. So my brother, who was also a cop, took test after test after test. I never really wanted to become a cop. I saw it as like a dead end job. This is how I was looking at it. So I never aspired to become a cop. I think I only applied to take the New Jersey State Police test once, and that was like, it was on a dare almost. It was like, hey, let's try to do this stuff. All right, mind you, I don't have any parking tickets. I don't have any arrests. I have graduate degrees. So when I applied for the test, they said I didn't meet their criteria. This is like 99. I didn't meet their criteria. I'm like, what criteria? I knew what criteria they were looking for. They were trying to be more inclusive. They didn't want people with clean. They didn't want it as clean or as educated. So I sort of just, whatever. Listen, I didn't want to do it anyway. So I take a job where I left teaching. I take a job flying coast to coast, going to all different. I actually worked in the golf industry, which was great.
Yeah.
Which was awesome, because I got to play some of the best courses in the country and never pay for them. And then they'd fly me from one coast to the other coast and everywhere in between. I was 23 years old, 24 years old. I was making good money. I was living out of a suitcase for 4 weeks out of the month. It got real tired. Like, you understand why people become alcoholics who live on the road, because there's nothing to do. You're in your hotel room and you're just sitting there and there's nothing going on. So what do? You go to the bar. You try to just have some sort of social interaction. I was getting really tired after like a year and a half, 2 years. I was getting really, really tired of it. And I'm in the gym one morning, one of the few days that I'm home, and there was a guy in there that I always worked out with. He was an older guy. I didn't really know much about his personal life. He just worked out hard, and him and I would work out together occasionally. One day, he's in there with a guy, and they said, we're just talking. He says, well, did you ever think of becoming a cop? And I told him that story with the state police. I was like, they just weren't looking for people like me. Mm. He's like, well, I'm the chief of police of this town called Roseland, and we're hiring. I think you'd be a good cop. Why don't you come in and take the test? Now, it's a chief's town. So in New Jersey, there's two types of departments. There's civil service departments, and then there's chief's towns. Chief's towns are who you know. So are civil service to some extent. But there's a testing procedure involved in that one. This is more like a basic IQ test. Although some chief's towns just use the civil service test anyway. It's a basic IQ test. It was easy. It was very easy. I think I got one question wrong, and I was mad that I got it wrong because I knew what it was. I get hired. First real interview process, anything. But I remember asking him, have you ever lost anybody in the line of duty? And very curtly, no. That was it. No. Okay. I'm taking this for a job because I'm being told that the salary is decent. I think at the time the salary was like $62,000 when I got hired. And you're talking 2001. So it was a decent salary. Like I said, never going to be, that's a starting salary. That's the ending salary. The starting salary was like $33,000. But I'm home every night. I have a job with some purpose. I have a pension. I have my medical benefits paid for. Okay, you get to see some cool shit.
And you have a community to care for too.
You do. And it's a small community. It's a small little suburban town. I take the job. I'm not thinking long game. I'm really not thinking long game. I'm like, let's see how this works out. At this point, I had moved job to job to job. I didn't really care. So I got a little bit of a rude awakening. And so they sent me to the academy. I started August of 2001. I show up to the police academy. Guy's standing there and goes, his name, Kevin Donaldson. You don't belong here. I'm like, okay. I start turning my car around. And he's like, no, just go park. It's like a game.
A little haze in there.
Yeah, it's a little game. I guess he didn't think I was going to turn around, but I go to turn around and he's, no, just park over here. Our instructor was a Force Recon Marine. He was about 5'7". And for people in the military, the first thing they love doing is putting you in what's called the lean and rest. Lean and rest is a push-up position. And you think you're in shape. You go out there and you run 1.5 miles, 2 miles. You think you're in shape. Go sit in a lean and rest on a hot asphalt pavement in August, and you realize how little shape or how poor shape you're in. This guy could stay in the lean and rest forever. And all they're trying to do, you realize it afterwards, but all they're trying to do is they're trying to break any individual, and they're trying to build you back up as a team, as one. Because when you're in deep shit, all you can rely on is each other. I fit like a round peg in a round hole. So that discipline, that chaos in my life. Remember when I went away to college and I started folding all my stuff, I started trying to bring some order. This brought some real order in there. You had if you were late, you got in some serious trouble. It was regimented. Everything was regimented. I just fit so well. And I started to enjoy it. I started to enjoy the PT. I started to enjoy everything about the academy. They made me a squad leader because I was 26. At 26, I was one of the older ones in the academy, so they put me in charge of a few guys, and I loved it. I absolutely love it. I started laughing. I started seeing this job as a regimented job that is fun, and you get to laugh. We used to have to do inspection, so I would have to follow the drill, and it's paramilitary. This guy's a serious guy, and I would follow him, but I'd fart. I'd fart right in front of it because you can't move, you can't laugh.
Yep.
And you don't want them to laugh because I'd get in trouble too, but I would fart and I would just stare at them, start wiggling my nose. Little fun things to do like that. Or, you had to stay in a uniform and you see somebody walking down the hall with their pants rolled up with the white socks on because they're not allowed to wear white socks. And it's just funny. But
you guys are about to get cooked and you're like,
right,
yeah.
Right. But it's you'll laugh more than you ever think you will during those situations. But you start to become bonded to these people. So that family and the friends, I didn't have a whole lot of friends growing up, and usually my friends were friends with me because of what I was doing. Either I had the drugs, or I knew an in on how to steal something, or I was tougher, so they were either afraid or they just hung around. I never really had a group of real close people. And that's what started to happen in there until, the first month was wonderful. It was the greatest thing ever. And then we're sitting in class one day on September 11th, 2001. Captain comes in and says, plane just hit the World Trade Center. Not that big of a deal.
So I want to get there in a second, but before that, I'm actually curious. Do you think, though, that that's the right way for cops to be being trained? Do you think it should maybe be upticked even more? Like, how do you see that? Because, a lot of people, they'll look at that and say, how should the police force be trained? Should we be more like special operations where we're going through, extreme levels of discipline, or should we be lighter? Like, how do you view it?
So I think they do it. I think the game is correct. It's a game. So the game is, and believe it or not, I employ these same tactics when I get a football team.
Really?
I break down every individual because no one person, it's not a singular sport. No one person's going to win the team. So you have to identify the individuals, pick them apart, and break them down. And then once they're down, you build up a common enemy. And usually that's the coach. You build up and if you're lucky, you'll build respect as well. if you're lucky. It's hard to do. So the first phase of the police academy, I think they do it correctly. Same thing as the military. They're going to break you down, and you're going to realize that you're nothing, you're dog shit, you don't matter. And then what happens? They build that common enemy, and you're like, oh, this son of a bitch. And then you start gathering together to dislike this one person. Then once you now are a team, then you can start that other instruction. Now, there are some things that the police academy, especially when I went through, was lacking. There was lack of jujitsu, which I think is huge. Unarmed self-defense was a week long. Yeah.
Nowhere near enough time.
Unless you're doing private training, and they always encourage you to do private training, but nobody's doing it. You had some people that, some cops had a little bit of Dunlap's disease. That's where their belly Dunlapped their belt. And I think that's a horrible look. But thankfully, our drill was really into how your uniform looked. You present on the outside, and you will become that person. You will become that integral part of the community, and your authority will be felt the minute you step out of the car. He taught us how to do all that stuff. So that's one overcoming. But I don't think they spend enough time on the physical. I don't think they spend enough time on the mental, because like I told you before, this job does steal your soul. Mm-hmm. It's from an era where don't show them that you're hurting inside, because if you show them that you're hurting, they're going to take your gun away, and you're going to be embarrassed. I think it's getting better. I really do think it's getting better. They are starting to employ some mental health things, but I think it's more for optics than real help, because the real help is out there. They're just not employing it.
What about the physical aspect? Has anything started to be done? Do you know if like jiu-jitsu is kind of being implemented, or there's like expectations on that?
I was taught by a guy who's since passed away, is Nicky Fresalone. He's called him the Bear. And he used to teach us bonus shots. And everybody thinks, a bonus shot is you get in one more, you could be on camera and it's nothing illegal, but whoever's not complying is going to feel it. Mm-hmm. And he used to teach us how to do a bonus shot. But I think it just wasn't enough time. Nicky was a savage. He was a I forget what his discipline was, but I think it was karate. He was the real deal. He was tough as nails. They need to give people like him a little bit more time to prepare you for what happens out on the street. Because I think 2 or 3 of my academy mates got arrested, lost their job, because they didn't know how to react when they got punched in the face. Mm-hmm. They just went crazy. I don't know what the curriculum is, but I can't imagine that it's gotten that much better. I think it's still only 23 weeks, 22 weeks, whatever it is. And it's just not enough time.
Would you prefer that trying to think of the word, I guess the expectations be risen to the point that there is less cops, but more better prepared and better equipped cops? Or do you think that moving those margins too high is also difficult?
You're fighting a war of attrition a lot of times. Mm-hmm. So it's whoever has the bigger numbers. If you can't cover a shift, but you have 5 people that are really squared away and really good at what they do, that's great. But you do need the bodies out there. I think it relies heavily, like if you're a professional, like with your podcast, how much time are you spending off air on this podcast?
7 days a week.
Correct.
24 hours, yeah.
That makes you a professional. If you're not reading something about your profession every single day or doing something to better your profession, you're just not a professional. So cops, and you'll see many of them out there that don't do this, should be in the gym, should keep themselves physically well, should eat healthy. The whole cop donut thing. Well, I've never had a donut in my life, but I got a comment every single time I went in to go get a cup of coffee in a donut shop. And to the point where you become jaded. Like they'll come in and like, oh, cops in a donut shop. Like, geez, that's the first time I heard that one. And I think I got in trouble once because I turned around and I said, every person that says that to me is fat. And then I turned around, got my coffee, and then dealt with the aftermath of it. And they're like, did you call this person fat? No, I did not call them fat. I just said every person that says cop in a donut shop is usually fat. That's it. But people don't understand. But a lot of cops don't do their homework.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not just a cop for 8 to 12 hours a day. You're a cop 24/7. And you better be putting in the time outside of work. Just like this podcast. If you're not putting in your time outside of it, what are you doing? You're not going nowhere. Mm-hmm. You're not doing anything. You're not going to get your message out. The same thing with police work. If you're not spending time in the gym, if you're not reading case law, if you're not making yourself better every single day, well, you're going to stagnate and you're not going anywhere. So go ahead, just go collect your paycheck, because that's all you're going to do. And one day you'll probably be chief, because that seems to be the people that make chief. But you really got to work at your craft.
So we were talking earlier about the raising salaries, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. Raising salaries, you'll have people that, you know, say, okay, I'm going to do the career path because there's more opportunity there, and you get some really great people. You also attract some people that, like you're saying, are just there to collect the paycheck and walk out the door. How do you view that?
It's kind of disgusting. So my job now, I'm an inspector and I work with a lot of police, and I see it. You know, their salaries in northern New Jersey, you have some patrolmen making as high as $160,000 to $170,000 plus overtime, plus longevity, plus. And then they're out on these road jobs, and it's like they're doing you a favor. Just give me the money. Like, no, you got to get out there and do your job. The salaries were competitive when I first got on, but then you started getting the 4% raises every year. And what that does is it causes a huge burden on the taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer in the town that I work in, and I watch it. And what are you paying for? What are you getting? Well, you're paying for the things that they can do or that they know how to do. But are they going to do them? That's the big problem. You're attracting people who are less civic-minded, and this is more of a good job type of thing. Mm-hmm. And to some extent, it's kind of the reason I took the job. It was a good job. It wasn't the highest paying job in the world, but I knew there was a future in it. You know, they run that slippery slope where when you start getting paid more than you're worth. There was a great book, and it was How to Value Yourself as an A, B, or C player at your current profession. Whatever you do in life, are you an A player but getting paid C salary, or are you a C player getting paid A salary? Because if you're a C player getting paid A salary, you're in danger, because that means you run the risk of getting fired. If you're an A player making C salary, well, you're undervaluing yourself, and you need to raise that to be commensurate with your abilities. Right now in current police work, I think they are getting paid A salary for B or C work. Cops 20 years ago, they were doing A work for C salary. And I just think it's gone the other way.
And that's kind of what I was getting to is, like, do you think a level of raising expectations, I mean, again, the average person's not going to understand when we say a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, but that's like not something you just walk in the door and get or pay for if you're doing, you know, like a Taekwondo gym. No offense to Taekwondo gyms, but a lot of them are pay to play. Like, you got to earn that. Do you think that, you know, inserting aspects like that to kind of get to that A tier?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to do that. You can start doing an incentive-based program. You know, unfortunately, too many cops, well, if they're not paying me, I'm not going to do it. That's the wrong attitude to have, but it's unfortunate that a lot of them do have that attitude. So you start making it incentive-based. You know, send them to whatever training you think, what administration thinks is best suited to make them a better cop. And if you get this, then you get this. Because police work is punishment-based. It's punitive rather than corrective. So you're trying to correct the bad behavior where cops are underprepared. So you give them incentives. You give them a stipend. You give them 0.5%, 1% on their salary if they make for every belt that they get. And guys are going to do it. Some guys, you're always going to have the lazy turds that aren't going to do it. But some guys are actually going to be go-getters and go do it and say, hey, listen, and here's the dual-edged sword on that one. So they're going to jiu-jitsu. Maybe they're a little bit out of shape. They're going to jiu-jitsu. They're getting in shape. They look better. Their command presence, which is how you appear when you step in front of the public, your command presence is going to go up. You become more confident. So think about all these benefits that you didn't see coming, all because you're trying to train them in order how to control somebody better. And everybody says, well, if you do too much, it could look too aggressive. No, it's actually, better than anybody. Doing jujitsu makes you less aggressive. Mm-hmm. It's a misperception.
It's interesting too. I always add this in a commonality when we see the bad cops. People love to say, well, why are there people standing there watching? And it's like, it's because it's, a lot of that time, if you don't have the experience or confidence to step up and say, what are you doing right now? You're not going to do it. You're caught in that situation. There's a number of things that go into it. And I think it would minimize the bad actors by having much more good, because the good ones would stand there, see what's happening. And like you're saying, their confidence, they have that command that's up. They feel better. They'll be more willing to step in and say, cut that shit out. Like, that's not what we do.
So you'll also lower police shootings. Mm-hmm. A lot of times police shootings come from an officer gets in a spot where their life is in danger because somebody bigger than them has taken control of them and they don't know what else to do. They're going to die unless they pull out their weapon and shoot this person. But if they were better trained, you will lower police shootings. Isn't that what the political atmosphere is? Let's try to lower police shootings. Well, this is one way to do it, but nobody's throwing money at this. They'll throw money at the legal system to try to prosecute these people. Like in New Jersey now, anytime you discharge your weapon with a crime, it automatically goes to the Attorney General's office for a review.
Seriously?
Yeah. So the minute if you're in the act, aside from killing a wounded animal, which we did quite a bit, if you discharge your firearm, it goes to the Attorney General's office for review. So now you're sitting with that. And while you're sitting for that, you don't know if it's a liberal administration, you could have a problem. And also the cops in New Jersey now they got to get licensed. There's a private license that they have to get. And I'm not exactly sure what it is. So then there's that stress of having it there when they're coming down on cops, but they're not giving them any opportunity to succeed.
I have to imagine at that point too, I mean, you got to be like sidelined for a bit, right? Where there's like that review process and everything. So, I mean, this goes to what you're saying, the number of attrition, that guy's not going to be able to work for however long that case is being processed. And I'm sure the people that were around him are probably somewhere involved in that where they got to, either be looked at, testify, whatever it might be. So, I mean, it kind of creates a snowball effect with all that.
And for a police officer to get there, especially a male police officer, I can't really speak to women on this one. Male police officer, you'll get your gun taken away. You'll sit at the desk and you'll be put on what's called, the unofficial term for it is the rubber gun squad. So in the academy, they give you the red rubber gun. It's kind of a placeholder in your holster. And that is the most embarrassing place to sit in your life because everybody knows, everybody's looking at you. They might not say it to your face, but they're going to talk about you behind your back. Oh yeah, Donaldson, he's on the rubber gun squad. And it's a very emasculating experience. People don't really get that. It's not a fun place to be.
As you said, you're still at the academy. You guys finishing up that last month, and 9/11 happens.
It was a strange day. Day started off normal, and we go out and do our morning PT. We go to sit in the classroom for our morning instruction. Captain Jack. So let me just tell you a little bit about him. He is a leftover from the 70s. If he were to walk on the set of Hill Street Blues, he would have fit right in. Mustache. We used to call him the Grapes because he'd wear these grape smuggler shorts. Like, the old 70s shorts, high socks, Terry Fox running shoes. And nice guy, good guy, great cop. But he comes in and says, hey, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. Everybody's like, all right. That's how it was. You living up there, planes used to hit those things all the time, or one of the buildings. Planes used to just fly into them. I don't know if you remember Corey Lidell, the Yankees pitcher. Mm-hmm. His Cessna ran into one of them, and that didn't happen that long before. So it was no big deal. But I will say this. There was a girl sitting next to me. Her name's Kristen. She was a transit cop. Her father worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. And you saw a look of concern. Oh, my father's in there. So they let her go make a phone call. And She comes back. She couldn't get in touch with him. 20 minutes later, comes back in. Another plane just hit the other tower. Now, all of a sudden, the atmosphere in the academy just changes. Everybody gets quiet. Everybody sort of just goes, instruction stops, trying to figure out what's going on. There's one TV, we're just looking for any information. They say, go call your departments because, about 10 minutes after the second one hit, go call your departments, find out what they want you to do. We're just sort of in this holding pattern and very helpless because nobody really understood what was going on. We did know it was probably intentional because it was a big jumbo jet. They're on fire. Our departments recall us. They need all the bodies they can. So it's that war of attrition, right? We need bodies. We start going back. Now, my route going back to the police academy took me past something called Eagle Rock Reservation. Eagle Rock Reservation, you have a clear view of this New York City skyline. I said, I want to see this. I got to see this. And you see both towers burning, and you're like, holy shit, this is bad. This is serious. I go back to my department, and nobody kind of knows what's going on. I think they were tracking. I'm not certain, but I think the plane had already hit the Pentagon at this point, and they were tracking the one that was in Pennsylvania, Flight 91. And I go, this lieutenant gets a hold of me. The chief tells him, go up to the armory and get him his gun. I'm a month into the police academy. I have no training. We have to qualify twice a year in order to carry a gun off duty. I have no training on a gun. I know how to shoot a gun. I've been shooting a gun my entire life. We go up to the armory, hands me my gun. It was a Smith & Wesson SW40. Smith & Wesson. It was like a Glock knockoff. It was a hammerless gun. Hands it to me, gives me rounds, 4 magazines or 5 magazines, 2 in my front, or 4 magazines in my front pouch, 1 in the gun and 1 in the pipe. So I have at this point 45. What is that? What's 5 times 15? 61 rounds on me. I'm not qualified to carry a gun, but that'll give you a little window into how chaotic the time was. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know what was coming next. We figured this is phase 1 of an attack. We had some high-value targets in town. Like we had ADP in town, which at that time had 70% of the world's paychecks. So you blow that place up and you shut down the economy pretty much. So they send me out to stand post. Here I am, this just rookie. I don't know anything. And the job changed. The first question I asked the police chief, have you lost anybody on duty? That was my way of asking, hey, is this a safe town? Things are no longer safe anymore. We're at war. That's what I'm thinking. We're at war. And I saw people coming out of this building, and they're stopping to talk to me. And they're saying, do you hear anything? Do you know anything? We didn't know anything beyond. They probably had more information than we had. We had people calling the police desk saying, hey, have you heard anything? We had no information to give them. So the time, this job where people are looking for answers to go to somebody to find out some information, we didn't have any information to give them. God, you want to talk about feeling helpless. It's feeling like you're not right for this job. But I saw people coming up and they just wanted something. They said, hey, do you know anything? I'm like, we don't know anything. I'm really sorry. And that sort of gave me a window into really what this job is. Somebody just coming up and looking for something, looking for somebody to gravitate towards, to hold on to, just for a moment of peace. And we couldn't give it to them. I remember going home that night. They kept us there for quite a while, going home that night and just watching the TV, shaking my head. And I didn't know where we went from there. Shortly after there, I went to go see my Uncle Duke, the one that was prisoner of war. And I was like, Uncle Duke, I don't know where we go from here. And remember, this is a guy who's seen a lot of stuff. He was actually in the car when his brother died in a car accident. So that was the whole reason he joined the military to begin with. He goes, look, you can't be afraid. If you're afraid, the terrorists win. Because that's what a terrorist does, just to instill as much fear and do maximum damage and make the optics gigantic. He says, you can't be afraid because if you're afraid, the terrorists win. The next couple days were sort of quiet, and even the criminals stayed home, which was great. Let's deal with this, and then we'll get back to cops and robber shit. We have to go back to the academy, but they shortened our academy. Our academy was supposed to be 22 weeks. They shortened us to 18 because we didn't know what's coming. The world's just trying to figure everything out. But I'll tell you this. After 9/11, police officers were never so beloved in this country because everybody saw, like, when everybody was staying home and didn't know what to do, police officers were still out there working. Mm-hmm. We were still doing our job. We're still trying to keep everybody safe. And we went back to the academy and we finished it out. The rest of the academy was pretty uneventful, but we looked at things with a little different eyes now. I think everybody did.
I was going to ask, how do you think 9/11 impacted your outlook on the community and kind of that protect and serve type of idea?
We definitely knew this shit was for real. We definitely took the job a little bit more serious. But before, it was enforcing motor vehicle, doing your burglaries, doing your domestic violence. Now it was something a little larger than that. The sad thing is we had a couple convenience stores in town. They were Indian owned. This is the sad part about 9/11. Everybody got grouped into that lowest common denominator because we all are judged by our lowest common denominator, cops and every other group of people in America. You have one bad person and you're all of a sudden, all of you are bad. So we had a lot of Indian-owned businesses and they would put up in the windows saying, we're Indian, we're not Muslim, because everybody at that point hated Muslims. And I really felt bad for those people because they got grouped into that just because of the way they look. They got grouped into that situation, even though that they're probably more American than most Americans. So that was really sad when that happened.
And what do you think about, a lot of people always say, and again, I was barely alive and when this happened, so I didn't get to experience this, but I hear this a lot. And it's a weird thing to say that the country needs, but it doesn't need, where they talk about nobody wished for a 9/11, but everyone at some point would like to see another 9/12, people coming together. And you kind of highlighted that there, where cops never became, more valued than at that time. Do you think that's missing today?
Every house had an American flag on it. There was no black, there was no white, there was no brown. There was no Christian, Jewish, Muslim. We were Americans for once in our life. And I have to believe that we were like this after Pearl Harbor. We were all Americans. I remember there was an Apollo flag on Route 46 in Wayne. I went there to go get an American flag. Go to that store. The line it's like a 3-hour wait. I gladly waited in that just to show I'm an American. You lost. You didn't do it. And that's what the terrorists didn't account for. The resiliency of Americans and for our ability to come together. So I've heard this before. The fall of any great civilization is separate and focus on the things that are not important. Focus on our differences. Focus on what gender we are. Focus on how we look, rather than focusing on, no, we are all an American. We're not black. I don't know any black Americans. I know Americans. I don't know any brown Americans. I know Americans, which is so counterintuitive to the way I was brought up. When you're all fighting for a common cause, and then you look at the attitudes towards police now. Nobody, we're not looked at very favorably. I still consider myself a cop, even though I'm no longer one. I can no longer do that job. We were never so loved after that time. And it's going to take something like that. Like, people ask me all the time, do you ever think the attitudes will go back to post 9/11? And I said, yes, I do. I believe, because this is the natural ebb and flow of police work. But it's going to take something really bad to happen, because then you're going to see our value. Our value, we have no value in peacetime. We have a lot of value in chaos. 9/12, this country was in chaos, but we were never so united. I pray every single day that is not what it takes. But unfortunately, I think that's where it's going.
Does that worry you?
Yeah. Yeah, because my kids are coming up on that age. You know, I have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old. My 14-year-old wants to, big military guy, wants to go into the military, wants to go to one of the military academies. He's going to be ripe of that age. But so like every 20, 30 years is usually when that stuff happens. You know, that's the natural ebb and flow. You know, we don't have too much peacetime throughout human history. I think it's like 200 years or something like that where there was no wars in total of written human history. And I just watched this thing with Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I get fascinated by. He said, they asked him a question, do you think that we are a program, like an artificial intelligence?
Simulation.
Simulation, that's what I was looking for. And he goes, I don't think that it's probable, or I don't think that it's possible, I think it's probable. And what he said, he actually made a joke at the end. He goes, our times of peace is when whoever was running the program had to go eat dinner. And I know that if you start thinking about it, he's 100% correct. But I pray every day that something bad doesn't happen. I really do, for the safety of my family and my children. But do I think it's going to happen? Yeah.
You know, it's interesting you talk about that because it's a weird way to say the most peaceful time. But when everything really kind of flipped on its head and really started going the opposite direction was, again, COVID. And it was when everyone was forced to stay in their house and couldn't go out. Now, again, I'm not saying that that was necessarily peaceful, but maybe boring or whatever it might be. You know, that's when stuff just went the complete opposite direction. And it's weird how the next big event, you know, was kind of the opposite, and the opposite happened. You know, there was a lot of compounding effects that kind of led to that.
The same thing I taught those kids when I was teaching high school, that Proverbs of hell inside the marriage of heaven and hell, the busy bee has no time for sorrow. Mm-hmm. If you're busy, you don't have time. You know what fights depression? Go get busy. You don't have time to be depressed. That guy out there or that girl out there working 18-hour days to try to support their family, you think they got time to be depressed? No, all they're worried about, they're focused on doing their job. They're focused on having their families survive. Busy bee has no time for sorrow. So you want to talk about a universal truth? We were busy fighting terror. We didn't have time to deal with all these petty things that we have time. We have too much time on our hands. You know, we're focusing on the wrong things. We should be focusing on how do we unite? How do we come together? Unfortunately, everything's so polarizing and this world is so tribal that I don't know if it's coming back anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't know either. I think about that a lot because we also, when you ignore a lot of those ideas, when we kind of let ourselves get, what you're saying, polarization, and where it gets so focused on the inside is when stuff from the outside can start compounding. You know, we talk about this all the time. And I'm sure some of the shows, you know, we were talking about offline that we watch, you know, there's other actors out there in the world, like China, I mean, plenty in the Middle East, like all those that are slowly making moves. I mean, people, if you were paying attention, you knew Russia was going to invade Ukraine months before Russia invaded Ukraine. They made it obvious, and it didn't get talked about until the day they invaded Ukraine. And suddenly it's a surprising thing. And it's saying there's all this stuff happening around the world.
I'm not an expert in global politics, but I do know that China is going to invade Taiwan. It's going to happen. We see all the moves there. Listen, if you're a chess player, they're playing chess. The ISIS and the Taliban and Osama bin Laden, they didn't play chess. They played checkers. Boom. Bombed the World Trade Center in 93. Bombing on the battleship in Yemen, the USS Cole. Mass visibility. Boom, 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 boom. But they have been moving those assets in place for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And guess what? I know that these extremist groups, they'll wait 50 years if they got to. You know, a terrorist is very patient. They're hard workers. They blend real well. They're great actors. So it's going to happen. And I fear for the younger generation. Listen, I'm on the back nine. All right? I'm on the back nine of my life. There's no two ways about it. But I got young children. I got family. I got people I care about. I worry for them. As much as this, every generation says, I worry about the young. I worry about the young. I've heard it my whole life. Well, I understand it now.
So continuing, post 9/11, we're kind of seeing this shift in the community. What do those next couple months look like, both in the town that you're from, where you were actually kind of operating, I guess, and in the greater tri-state area as well?
It was actually one of the better times. It really was. It was one of the better times in my conscious life. I had a purpose. My job was my purpose. That was my identity. I dove head deep into that. And I was married at the time, which didn't work out. Listen, you can't be a good cop without having at least one divorce. But it really kept me focused on doing the job at hand. It was actually very freeing. I finally felt like I had a purpose in this life. Mm-hmm. As horrible as the situation was, we all knew we were going to war. We knew what was coming. We knew what was happening, but you also saw some great things. You saw George Bush Jr., and politics aside, whether you liked the guy or whether you didn't like the guy, steps out on the pitcher's mound of Yankee Stadium and throws, and I'm not a Yankees fan. I do not like the Yankees.
Mets fan?
I'm a Philly fan. I'm a South Jersey kid.
Oh, that's even worse.
Yeah, I'm a Philly fan. Listen, there's just you're never going to change my mind. Why do you think I grew up tough? Because I was a Philly fan. But you saw George Bush Jr. step out on that mound and throw that pitch. I think everybody watched that at least once. And I remember there's a scene. Somebody was taking movies. He's down in the basement of Yankee Stadium and he's throwing pitches. Derek Jeter comes up to him and says, if you miss this strike, they're all going to boo you. That's what he said. But he went out there with a bulletproof vest on underneath a Yankees jacket and threw a strike. God, what a great metaphor for the American people. In the face of enormous odds, knowing we're going to war, knowing that darkness is coming, he goes out and throws a strike. Whatever you think about that man, for that moment, he was the man. Mm. We need something like that again.
So you dive into becoming a cop, and this is, a career path that necessarily, some people, growing up, they're like, I'm going to be a cop. This is what I'm going to do. You kind of fell into it, and then this event happens, and you start really feeling comfortable. What was the feeling there? Did you feel like you had found your purpose, that you found the home, that you really felt like this is where I should be?
It was a trial by fire.
Yeah.
It started to pick up about when we first got out of the academy, stuff just started. It started getting busy. Mm-hmm. The criminals started coming back out of the woodworks. And for whatever reason, the town got real busy. Like first day out on the road, they give you a field training officer, your FTO. And we're in the car. We just barely checked the car. They teach you how to check the car, make sure it's got everything you need, check your oxygen, check everything. Start heading to this address, and I still remember the address. It's 23, I won't mention the name of the street. 83-year-old female, unresponsive. You go over there, first call out of the academy, the first call. We go over there, and downstairs of a townhouse, those little powder rooms, the bathrooms are kind of small. Mm. Here she is. She's in a position as if she was like a Muslim praying in a spot that's maybe this big. It's a position that an 83-year-old woman does not get into. And I'll never forget that one of the sergeants was on the other side of her, and it was such a small bathroom. His arms are on both sides of the wall. And he goes, well, I guess we got to do something. And he, 20 years, ended up being my mentor and a guy who I am friends with to this day. We lift her out. Now I'm in training mode, right? I remember everything from the training. It's fresh in my mind. Okay, bare the chest. You don't want to bare the chest of an 83-year-old woman.
No.
It's not what you think it is. This wasn't Dolly Parton. It was a little jarring. Here you got somebody who's dead, right? Outside of a funeral home, I'd never seen a dead body before. And now I'm hands-on a dead body. She was in such bad shape that I actually had to pull her real teeth out so they don't get lodged in her airway. I'm plucking them out. Put the bag valve mask on there. You hook up the defibrillator. You're doing compressions. And mind you, when you're doing compressions and that defibrillator is hooked up, that defibrillator is recording everything you do. So you better not screw up. So, okay, you do the real easy metric on how to do compressions is hum the tune Staying Alive. And that'll give you your compression rate. She doesn't make it. Now you stand up, you're sweating, it's hard work. Then you turn around and you see their family who's just showing up as they're getting wheeled out. Now you got to go talk to the family and say, hey, your mother, your grandmother just died. I was the last person to work on her. And then you see the drain on their face. They just lost somebody they love. And then the next day, armed robbery out of a Best Buy. We ended up catching a guy up on 280 up on the highway. And that was back in the days when the glove box could magically open. They could just magically, it was amazing. They just pop right open. And there's a gun. A little snubbed, I think it was a 38, sitting there in the glove box. Like, holy shit. And you just start getting this trial by fire. And then you have car thefts and car chases and stuff. And there's high octane, high adrenaline situations. I was actually relieved to get put on midnights. I'm a new officer. They put me on midnights. And sure enough, we go up to this, and I don't think I haven't thought about this incident for a long time. We go to a house where it was a ongoing domestic issue but the husband had broken into the garage and was sort of hiding in one of the cars in the garage. The wife knew it, calls us over. We open up the garage. Our guns are drawn. One of my sergeants is on the driver's side. I'm through the passenger side, and I can see him. He's reaching for something. He keeps going. No matter what commands we're putting out, our guns are pointed directly at this guy, and he's not stopping. We came within a hair. When you hold a gun, you never put your finger on the trigger because there's something called sympathetic trigger. For instance, if my finger's on the trigger and I take my other index finger and I move my radio, that'll happen.
I never thought about that.
It's called sympathetic trigger. So it got so close to a shoot that my finger went on the trigger. That's how close it was. He was reaching for his cell phone. And he came within milliseconds of getting shot. I wasn't even on for 6 months when this happened. It would have changed everything for me. Mm-hmm. And even in a small town, I used to hear this quite a bit where, what happens in Roseland? I said, well, what do you think there is left to steal in Newark and East Orange and Irvington? There's nothing left to steal there. They come here. So we're going to get some stuff. And then you have the service calls. So the service calls were always my favorite. So somebody who is having a medical issue or somebody who is in true distress, they call you and they don't know what to do. Well, you get to show up and you're like this modern day superhero where, hey, listen, pick up the bat phone, call Batman. He'll get there. He'll know what to do. And we have to show up and know exactly what to do. But we don't. We just try to figure it out. We're a little bit further detached. We're not in that panic mode. And you start seeing this stuff over and over again. Then you start seeing some suicides. You start seeing some fatal motor vehicle accidents. You really see people at their worst. Nobody calls the police to say when their kid graduates college or their son or daughter got married. They call you when they don't know where else to call. So it starts to slowly eat away at you over time. But then there's some wins. Like there's good calls too. The one call that I remember very vividly, we go to a woman, she's in some sort of mental distress, and she has a little child next to her. And she's going to kill herself. She won't let anybody near the child. I sit down next to her, which I shouldn't have done because she had a knife, but I felt comfortable enough to do it. And I just talked to her like a human being. I didn't talk to her like a robot. And we were able to get her some help. And then we had another guy. He was born a woman. He was a man. But he looked like the state wrestling champ in 1978. He was bald, barrel-chested, testosterone gels all over the ground. Like he was just, I think he just overdid it. But he would sit there, and he had some problems going on. He used to think bugs were flying in the walls. This guy, all he wanted was for somebody to sit and listen to him. That's all he wanted. And you had some of the older cops here that just didn't have time for this bullshit. And they would just, come on, let's go. Come on, stop, cut your shit, let's go. I sat down and I just talked to the guy because you saw there's body language. He would sit there and he'd do this and he clench his fists. I sat down and talked to him, and I was able just to say, hey, look, buddy, we have to go to the hospital. You're in some sort of distress. I had to sit there and watch him cry because he didn't want to go to the hospital, but he had no choice. But I was able to do it because I just showed him a little bit of compassion. Incidentally, every time after that we had problems with him, they called me because I said, I would look at the people and I would like, just go away. Just go away. This person just wants somebody to listen to him. No matter how crazy the story is, just listen to him because it's real to them. Mm-hmm. Whatever's going on in their life, that's their biggest problem right now. It may be a minor inconvenience and there's going to be a lot of paperwork afterwards, but that's the biggest thing to them. So that was the real job. The other stuff, while some of it was fun, you're doing 140 miles an hour in a Crown Victoria down 280. That was fun. But afterwards, you're like, holy shit, if I hit a pothole, I'm dead. That's it. Those calls for service were always my favorite. And then there was, the juvenile calls too were also juveniles are stupid. I mean, they're stupid because I would go up to these places. I'm like, all right, guys, you got 5 minutes to search yourself. You got anything, give it up. Meanwhile, it's a dark place. I'm expecting them to throw it down. Trying to give them some grace, and inevitably want to go, hey, listen, I got some weed. Dude, come on, man. You idiot. Now I got to do something because my boss is standing right there. I have to do something. So I got no choice. Or if, another thing is you tell them, you get out of the car and you're like, stop. And they stop. Like, what is wrong with you guys?
Just keep running.
Just run. I'm not chasing you. I have 30 pounds of gear on.
Yeah.
I'm 240. I'm not chasing you. You're not doing really anything that bad. And that's how life went on. But what happens is you see these things. You see the car accidents. You see the suicides. You see people, you walk into a house and there was one in particular, guy blew his head off with a 30-30 rifle. Big round. So what it does is it mushrooms your head. The concussion and the percussion inside so you're looking straight at the top of his head and you can see his teeth. Meanwhile, you ask the people downstairs, like, hey, do you even hear it? That's a loud bang. Yeah, I thought I heard something a couple days ago. Like, you didn't call anybody? Gunshots are pretty,
They're loud.
They're loud. And if they're lighting off fireworks inside their apartment, there's a problem. So you might want to call us. But anyway, you start seeing things that nobody else should see.
Mm-hmm. That humans weren't meant to see.
Yeah, we're just not meant to see that stuff. And so you bury it down deep because you got to go home. You go home. I was dating my wife at the time, and she would ask me this question: hey, how was your day? It's good. It was okay. It's okay. You can't talk. And so you shut down, and they know you're shutting down, and they want to pry for a little bit more information. You're like, do you want to hear what color the baby was that died? Do you want to hear that one? It was like a teal blue. Do you want to hear do you want me to describe how when you die, your final moments, you usually shit your pants? You want to hear that? So you bury it, and then pretty soon they just stop asking. But one of the things you find out is there's real, at the end of life, there's no dignity. It's never a John Wayne movie, famous last words and something dignified to come out of your mouth. They usually die on the toilet. They're naked, and you become real hardened to it. There was one woman, whenever you're having a heart attack, a myocardial infarction, feels like you got to go to the bathroom. And so that's why a lot of people die on the toilet. This woman was having a heart attack. She went to the bathroom and made her way back to the bed. And they usually start sweating, so they start stripping off clothes. We go to the apartment, and it's 1:00 in the morning. Somebody's got to sit on the body until the detectives arrive because they got to go through the scene to make sure there was no foul play. So I got to sit there. And I'm sitting with this woman. I'm alone in the apartment. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm tired. Mm-hmm. I'm so hardened that I fall asleep in the chair in the same bedroom. She's laying on the bed naked. I'm watching TV. And I take my gun out and I just sit my gun on my my lap. Detective comes in because they all lived like an hour away. Comes in and he goes, makes a little noise. He goes, "You really fall asleep with a dead body in the room?" I'm like, "I'm tired. I mean, what do you want?" And he goes, well, why is your gun out? And I said, because if she moves, she's getting double tapped. And then you start dealing with things with that crazy humor. Mm-hmm. And it's a coping mechanism.
Can you explain that? Because most people, I mean, I have a lot of military guys on the podcast, so they might be familiar, but maybe somebody that's first-time viewer, what dark humor looks like and why it's kind of utilized for these professions.
Because you're seeing things that you're not supposed to see. What are you going to do? Sit there and cry about it? No, you try to crack a joke, hopefully that nobody hears but your colleagues. And it's just a coping mechanism to try to lighten the mood a little bit so you don't get stuck into that deep, dark place. One of the worst ones I ever said was an elderly couple. They slammed license plate first into a tree, into a big oak tree. And listen, I'm a crash guy. Like I used to go out there and investigate fatal motor vehicle accidents. I love it. I love the math involved. It's like a science experiment. It's like a math problem. So they slam into the tree, license plate first, which usually means suicide, but not this time. The husband had a massive medical event, and they were driving a 91 Acura. In 1991, because they were trying to get people to wear their seatbelts, they used to have these automatic seatbelts. It would just come on like this. The reason they did away with them is because you had to manually do the lap belt, and this shoulder strap really didn't do much. So he's in a spot between the steering wheel and the seat that's about that big. He's dead. She's got her head on the dashboard, no airbags. And I go over there and I smash the window. I'm trying to check pulses, and a newer officer was there. And he's looking at her, and you can tell he's just not in a good place. And he's like, "Oh, man, this is awful. What do you think the last thing that went through her mind was?" And I said, "I could tell you." She goes, "How do you know?" And I said, "It was the dashboard." So that sounds very harsh. But I'm sitting there looking at an elderly couple who are obviously married, who now I know I got to do a full workup on their car, on them. I got to go to their autopsy. I got to watch them be cut open. And they're actually, it's actually kind of beautiful because they went out together. But, and I know I got to do all these things. So I have to make this palatable to me so I can go on and do my job further. So I don't get stuck there. You know, if you were to go out in the street there and see somebody, God forbid, get shot, gets hurt, maimed, killed, that's going to stick with you for a while. You better find a way to make it right in your head, or else it's going to really play into your life heavily. So that's what we do. And some of the stuff, thankfully, the public never hears us. We don't do it to be mean. We don't do it to be disrespectful. We do it for our own sanity. Is it right? It's a release.
Yeah.
It's a release, but we really didn't, especially at these times, we really didn't have a whole lot of releases. It's not like we were all running to therapists to go talk about our feelings.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to get into that here, but I'm just going to say it too. Like, I have experience with locker room talk's a lot different, but when you go to some locker room, we have our levels to that. And then also being around, a lot of guys in the profession through the podcast and stuff, and just, understanding, the humor that is behind that. And that's why I wanted to explain is like, I have the ability to laugh at those jokes and stuff and see that. And it's not because what you're saying, it's not just because it's funny, but it's because when you look at something that dark, there's only so many ways that you can look at it and still say, the next day you're still able to kind of walk around and feel normal about it. And so sometimes the dark humor, people may not be able to understand, but if you're never experienced or seen any of those things, you're not really in a place to kind of talk and work, how people want to work through those things.
We just don't want to spill the glass or fill up that glass. We have a glass, I believe. We have a glass, and in that glass is the amount of pain, suffering, and just crap we can see. If we don't empty it periodically, the glass is eventually going to spill over because we don't know how big that is. We don't know how much stuff we can take. And that dark humor empties a little bit out there so we can function one more day. Because there's only two choices. It's either you're going to move on or you're going to get stuck in the past. And we have to move on. We don't have a choice. You know, if we see something bad, we got another call waiting. We have to go to it. And we have to maintain our poise and our dignity and move forward and do that job, because the next person deserves the same level of service that the first person got.
So let me ask you, you just highlighted there wasn't necessarily an outlet. And I'm going to say PTSD just so you can provide kind of the explanation there, because I do agree with that. And I think it's awesome to say. But was that something that was a common conversation or a thought? Did people really even want to bring up the idea of having PTSD, PTS?
Never. Do you know how much time I spent in the police academy dealing with learning about how to deal with mental health? Do you know how many hours we spent?
Zero.
Zero. This is 2001. 0 hours of dealing with post-traumatic stress. When you get on the job, and the old timers will tell you, if you're having a problem, just talk to me, and you're not going to talk to them. Don't say a word, because if you say a word, you're going to get put on that rubber gun squad. They're going to force you to go to the police therapist. You know, it's kind of like you ever see the movie Lethal Weapon? Mm-hmm. All right. That's one thing that movie got right about police work. You notice that the therapist is always trying to get Riggs to come talk to her, and he just sort of plays it off, doesn't want to talk to her. That's reality, except that therapist is never coming to seek you out. And you just cope with it any way you can. This is why cops become alcoholics, because at least if you drink enough, you can forget for a short period of time. You can move on with your life. You know, alcoholics don't become cops. Cops become alcoholics. And there's all sorts of different bad behaviors. Cops will go out and get a girlfriend because, again, that hole starts to open back up inside of them, and they're just trying to fill it with something. You know, you'll see a lot of cops have, I'm going to catch a lot of heat for this one because I'm going to out some people. Cops will go out and they'll call them gumads.
Gumads?
Gumads. It's Italian gumada. Mm-hmm. You know, I see you got Sopranos thing. I got to teach you. I'm not Italian, but they'll go out and get a girlfriend because they're lacking something. And what happens when they find out that girlfriend doesn't give you what you're needing or doesn't fill that hole? What do? They go out and get another girlfriend. And then when that doesn't work, well, maybe if I get promoted, that'll fill it. Nope, doesn't fill it. And on down the line you go, and you just start going into these different bad behaviors. And more times than not, those bad behaviors just start collapsing in on themselves. Post-traumatic stress, we don't get any training, or there wasn't any. I don't know. It's different now. We didn't get any training. We were told to shut up, walk it off, rub some dirt on it, suck it up. You got a job to do. You better go do it. And that was it. And it sucked. It sucked because I knew a lot of people that were really hurting. And you saw that one cop that was just like a bully, right? Just like what we were talking about earlier with bullies. You saw that one cop going through some really bad stuff, drinking heavily, hitting it hard. Everybody's like, well, he's going to fall. He's a jackass. Or one cop gets busted for DUI or something. Well, he's just an idiot. Well, nobody ever asked why he was doing that. What was going on? What got him there? Because there's a reason for it. Nobody drinks for no reason. Otherwise, you're just a social drinker. So I know it's getting a little bit better now. New Jersey has something called the Resiliency Project. But here's the problem. Resiliency Project was started by a guy named Bill Mazer, who I know. He's a really, really good friend of mine. It was brought to New Jersey anyway by him. And what it does is allots certain officers within the department as specialists that if you're having a problem, you can go talk to them and get some time off of work in order to go heal. The problem is it's an appointed position. Police work is probably the most political place you could ever be. There's people on the A team and there's people on the B team. Okay, the A team is they're fans of the administration. Administration is fans of them, and then there's people on the B team who don't like the administration. So if the chief has to appoint these positions, he's not going to appoint anybody from the B team, even though they might be the best person for the job. He's going to appoint one of his boys, one of his guys. Now, if somebody on the B team's having a problem, are they going to go to somebody on the A team who they know is a direct conduit to the chief? They're not going to say anything. They're just going to keep it inside. So it's kind of a broken system. It was started with the best intentions, but it's become, like most things, politicized.
Mm-hmm. So that's actually what my next question was going to be as well. A lot of times in these communities, I mean, you hear that, like when I was talking to Taylor, he was saying, you know, I was fucking up, I was drinking, I was partying, I was doing all this dumb shit. And, you know, the guys on the team, they would obviously tell him, you know, hey, maybe let's get it together or whatever. But they never ratted him out to leadership because those are your brothers. Those are guys that you see in combat that are seeing, you know, the same dark stuff you're seeing, the guys you're making the jokes with. And I think cops get heat for this sometimes as well. Well, they'll say, you know, people don't want to report, you know, the other guys in the department. How do you view that as well? Is that something that you kind of saw? And I guess, what do people not understand about that?
So the thin blue line, I'm here to tell you, is a myth. It doesn't exist. Cops are those crabs in a barrel. They say they have your back. I'm telling you they don't. They're always looking for their next advancement. There are some who are true blue. They're going to do everything they can to protect you. And then there's other ones that are going to bury you the first chance that they have. They're in every department. I used to call it, some guys wear knee pads. They get on their knees and they'll suck the administration off. And it becomes a very toxic, anxiety-filled place. I was the person, so mind you, I took a job. I'm not saying I'm more benevolent than anybody else, but I can tell you right now, I've never ratted anybody out. I took a job that swore to protect those who can't protect themselves. Cops are really good at protecting other people. They're very bad at protecting themselves, and they're very bad at protecting those people inside the department. Just to give you a case in point, let's say you had a problem with inside the department. You saw something that wasn't right, and you want to fight the administration on it because it's against your contract or whatever. There are people who enjoy walking in the middle of the road because they don't want any blowback. But they have information that could bolster your case and prove your case true. You know they have information. I never once asked anybody to lie for me, but I do ask you to tell the truth. And those people won't tell the truth. They just keep walking in that center line. But what they don't understand is the center of the road is the most dangerous place in the world to walk because you're getting shit from both sides. They will protect you as long as there are no consequences on themselves. You saw this. So there was a war going on between the New Jersey State Police and municipal cops. This is probably 2007, 2008. What had happened was a trooper was drunk, and he was in the parking lot of a Dunkin' Donuts, and he backed into somebody, and he hurt him. Well, the cops show up, and they have to arrest this guy for DUI. It's all on camera. You know, I'll protect you as much as I can, as long you're not. My job's more important than your job. So they started this big war. There was no thin blue line. There was no working it out. You had state troopers writing wives and husbands of municipal cops seatbelt tickets, stupid stuff. Like, why would you do that? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I sat down, I sat down with one of the state police guys who I knew. And I said, look, we got to stop this. Like, this is getting bad. This is, you know, it's one of the last pieces of professional courtesy we can have is, you know, don't write my family members a seatbelt ticket. Come on, it's stupid. And all it does is cause separation and dissension. It's no good for anybody because, you know, when the shit hits the fan, we all need to be there for each other. Not, I'm not going there for them. They wrote my wife a seatbelt ticket. I'm not doing that. So it's bad for everybody. But I don't think that thin blue line is as thick as everybody thinks it is.
Do you think it's gotten worse recently?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why so?
Because everybody's looking out for number one. Everybody's looking out for themselves. There is no let's keep this amongst ourselves. Let's make sure we're doing stuff right, but let's handle a lot of this shit in-house. It's always, well, I don't like this person because they grieved a policy that I have, even though it was against our contract. They grieved it, so they become butthurt about it. Administration is very guilty of this. I'm going to go after them with the full force of the town, and I'm going to try to make their life hell. And it happened to me because I was a union guy, right? So when I saw something that wasn't right, that was against our contract or that was illegal, I would step up and do it. Now, I'm a different animal because I do my research, okay? I read. Something as stupid as a policy came down from administrations that says, you can't call any any superior officer by their first name inside the police department. It's stupid. All right. They make you sign for the memo. You hand it in. Well, I see a sergeant the next day, the same sergeant who had his hands up on the wall. Hey, Steve, how you doing? I said it right in front of the chief. How you doing, Steve? I see the chief get red-faced, calls me in the office, holds the memo out. You sign this memo. I'm like, yeah, I signed that memo. It's like, well, you just called him Steve. I was like, yeah, you're right. He's, well, you're going to get charged. You're going to lose days off. I said, okay, well, you're going to charge me for what? And they're like, well, you called his first name. I said, right here, it says superior officers. He's a supervisor according to the table of organization. Sergeants are supervisors, superior officers are lieutenants, captains, and chiefs. So I knew I was right. Like I was waiting for it. I baited him into it just to aggravate the hell out of him. I did it purposely. And then the policy changes. But that's how I would do things. And it would but when you start doing that, when you go down that road, you realize you have to be better than everybody else. Because the minute you screw up, you are going to get called on the carpet and you're going to get nailed to the wall. So towards the end of my career, I would throw up and then go out on the road. So once I got on the road, I was fine. It was inside the department, that inside the police headquarters, that became so anxiety filled that I was on pins and needles every single day. And all I was trying to do was protect my fellow officers. Mm-hmm. And that is not the majority of people. They'll just acquiesce to whatever comes out, whether it's legal or illegal. They just acquiesce to it.
How would you like to fix that?
Make a term limit on police chiefs. Mm-hmm. Police chief should be no more than 5 years. Some people would say 2, because after 5 years, that position becomes politicized. It's no different than any politician. Once they get elected, what's their next job?
Get elected.
To get reelected. Same thing with police chiefs, because it's an appointed position by the town council or the town governing body. So once they get in, it's staying in. And that's all they care about. It's not doing what's right. I'm generalizing. I'm overgeneralizing because there are some good people out there. But there's one guy in particular, and when he made police chief, I go, how the hell did you make police chief? Because that's the guy that should be police chief, but because of that is the reason he'll never be police chief. And sure enough, he lasted like 5 years because he goes, I couldn't take the political bullshit. And I said, that's because you should have never been in that position. You're too good for that position. You make a term limit on police chiefs. That's how you do it.
So when you say the political bullshit, what are police chiefs usually dealing with? Because it's, that's not something I think people necessarily think about. Police can obviously be politicized, like the basic person's going to say, laws get passed, whatever it might be. But actually having polarization really affect, the chief, the officers. Like, what are they looking for?
They're politicians. A police chief is a politician. You don't get to that position without some serious juice. And by juice, I mean you have political power. You caught a politician doing something wrong, and now that politician owes you a favor. You skirt the law constantly, and knowing that you have dirt on somebody else to get you out of that stuff. So it's just a giant political game. There is no way in the world that if I was given the opportunity that I'd ever want to be a police chief, because I am not that political person. I'm not politically correct. I'm going to do what's right at the hazard of whatever. Like this all goes away at some point. This whole world goes away. You have to retire in New Jersey at 65. It all goes away. So all you can do is try to leave some sort of a legacy. That's all you want to do in life. And what's your legacy going to be? Are you going to be a tyrant? Because that's what some of these guys are. They become tyrants. They stay in that job for 20 years. There's nobody should stay at the head of power for 20 years. No, across the board. It shouldn't happen because you're going to become jaded and you're going to become resentful and you're going to become arbitrary on how you dole out your punishments. Good cops, you'll see them retire the minute they can because they don't want any more of this stuff. I always say after I retired, I miss the clowns, not the circus. And I mean that. I miss the guys. I do not miss the circus that they were in. So
does it worry you that, especially recently, I mean, police have become more politicized than ever? Like, you kind of got to play ball as your chief. You got to, like, it feels like, you know, we're seeing this all over the country as well. Police forces are having difficulty recruiting new people and being able to kind of keep up the numbers. You know, the attrition war we were talking about earlier. Does it worry you seeing that it's kind of reached political heights maybe even never seen before?
It's disgusting. It's disgusting. You got to figure with a job that pays as well. And I'm talking about New Jersey, like DC, these poor guys here. Their pay structure is crazy. It's like 27 years the top pay. It's crazy. But in New Jersey, you'd figure a very high-paying job should be more sought after. Well, nobody wants to deal with the after effects of it. Those political battles that you get in. And you really you have to become somewhat of a lawyer in order to survive your full time, because you have to navigate through just a little petty stuff. And you know, one of the greatest things ever, and I don't care what anybody says, when they started putting cameras in the cars, one of the greatest things ever. Mm-hmm. Do you know how many demeanor complaints I used to get saying that I yelled at people? And then you play back the tape, and they're like, and they would watch it. He's not yelling at you. What are you talking about? I'm just talking one octave higher than you are. If you want me to yell, I can yell, but I prefer not to. And I'm very monotone and very, you know, direct, and people would think I'm yelling at them. So those cameras came in and they started protecting us because we had an objective eye watching us at all times, which I love. You know, if I'm doing something wrong, call me on it. But if I'm doing everything right, I'm going to fight you till my last breath, saying that I was right. There was one I pulled over a guy. Here's the problem. Here's a big problem. I pulled over a guy, and it was something stupid, but I think I wrote him a ticket and I let him go. And he said I told him to go back to Egypt. I swear to God. So we have the MVR camera the whole time. Guy came in and filed a complaint, a demeanor complaint. So now I got to go through the whole internal affairs process because he filed a complaint. He wrote it, which is lying on an official public document. He said it on a recorded line, which is lying on an official public document. He went into the interview room. This is the time he said it. He said this, boom, boom, boom. They review the tape. I obviously don't say it. So I get cleared. I get exonerated is what they call it. I said, well, can I go back and sue this guy or arrest this guy for filing false police report? And they said, no, the prosecutor's office won't allow it because they don't want to deter victims from stepping up and saying something. Nobody's deterring a victim. They're just, listen, you're going to say it, say the truth. Mm-hmm. And then I looked at that lieutenant and I said, if anything he said was true, what would happen to me? And he goes, oh, you'd be in a lot of trouble. I said, right, I lost my job. So why is there no repercussions for somebody coming in and saying anything? And you'll hear this from every internal affairs officer. They're like, there's no recourse. They can say, and now they can give complaints anonymously. So it's rubber band back where maybe in the 70s and 80s, you were able to keep all that stuff where it was actually bad.
Yeah, like hidden.
Yeah. It was really bad because, you know, you could say whatever you want to people and get away with it. Now it's rubber band back so far the other way that anybody can make any false claim and get away with it.
I've seen that as well, that when there's issues with cops, like something might have happened, people will go back and look at their records, and those things are all tracked in the public record. Mm-hmm. So they'll say, oh, well, you know, Kevin, he said this to this guy, even though it never happened. And they'll be like, well, the guy was never arrested, so clearly something happened. Maybe they're hiding, you know what I mean? Like that. I've seen that created. And again, it's just like it opens up the door to just say, you know, you want to label them as bad, kind of got a free pass to do so.
And once they started doing that, that joy of post 9/11 started going away.
Mm-hmm.
Once they started getting involved in that stuff, things just started to change.
So let me ask this question, and if you can pinpoint the time, would you say that after seeing all that and, you know, the couple months, years that go through, you kind of reach a point of feeling like quote unquote numb?
I was numb to the bullshit inside the police department, but I pride myself on never taking it out on the public. I always was beholden to the public. I was always trying to be the best cop I could always be. And you see this in guys who go down that path. Their uniforms will start getting sloppy. You know, like I was a big uniform guy. Like my shoes were always polished. My uniform was always squared away, dry cleaned. My hair was always neat, always shaved. I always wanted to be exactly what the public wanted me to be, which was the person to show up and know what to do when they don't. So I never once took that out on the public, but I have seen other officers do it, and they abuse people.
What about numb to kind of the darker situations? So seeing...
Oh, yeah. You know, you just, oh, look at that. There's a dead body there. Oh, wow. Look at the guy. The guy took a dive off the 3rd story here and hit his head on an I-beam. Now there's brains on the ground. Oh, wow. That's what brains look like. Yeah, it was like nothing.
Do you think you can pinpoint the moment, or was it kind of just compounding over time?
You start becoming morbidly fascinated with it. There was a method of suicide that crossed from China. First, it crossed from China to Japan, and then came to California and started working its way east. And it was a way of killing yourself with H2S gas that you could make with stuff you can get in Home Depot. And they gave you specific instructions on how to do this online. They even had printable sheets that say, to tape up on your windows and says, don't come near this car without SCBA, with a breathing device. And you put the chemicals in there, you tape up your door handles, and you kill yourself. There was one of our parks. We go there, and the door is open, and the signs are all up on the door, but we're Blue Canaries. We go in first, right? Mm-hmm. And I go over to the thing, and here's a guy who did this, and he tried to check out at the last minute. But he didn't have enough, so he died. But I got hit with H2S gas, and I remember my eyes just swelled up and started burning. I had to go to the hospital and get an eye flush. I came around and shouldn't have looked in that door, but I wanted to see. Because that was a way you start looking for something new. I've seen 100 people shoot themselves in the head. I've seen people hang themselves. I've seen people commit suicide in every way possible. This is one I'd never seen. And I had to go around to the door to see this guy. And it wasn't numb, it was just a fascination. You know, I've seen people get their heads taken off in accidents. I've seen people get bifurcated, cut right in the middle, and the only thing keeping them together is their intestines. I've seen dead children. I've seen dead parents, grandmothers, you know, all down the line. And it just becomes to the point where you get a call of an unresponsive person and you go, you put on your brave face and you go and you do your job. You can only take so much death.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, was there ever a moment where you were able to become retrospective about the things that you were seeing? Or was it just the next one and on to the next one, and you just kind of let it all flow through?
You never thought that it would affect you long term. Mm-hmm. You always just thought, okay, this is today's mess. And you just move on. You really just move on, but your home life's suffering. You become more aggressive at home. You become more short at home. Now, my kids are real young. My first one's born, and you're trying to shield them and protect them as much. So you're just isolating yourself. Some days you come home from work and you just want to be left alone. You just want to decompress. I was always a gym guy, so I would do a lot of my decompression in the gym. I'd run, and anything just to clear my mind. So I didn't have to do this. But unfortunately, my wife was starting to take some of the brunt of a lot of the stuff. We'd argue and I would just get nasty or something like that. You're not sleeping when you're doing shift work, which that also adds to it. It's a progressive thing to, it just becomes normal life. Like, you don't even think about it. It just becomes your normal. But inside you're hurting. Mm-hmm. Inside you're dying.
Did you ever find it difficult to make friends that weren't in police work or that type of work as well?
I was one of the people who did not always associate with police officers. I had friends who were police officers, but I had friends who weren't police officers. I think it's very unhealthy for a cop to only hang around other cops because you need to separate yourself from the job every once in a while. Because you get a bunch of cops in a room, all they're going to do is talk about this job, or what's going on in the department, or this, and it just becomes a 24/7. It's like it's what I imagine a bully or a person being bullied feels in today's world with social media. Mm-hmm. It's 24/7. You go home, you hop on your phone or your computer, and it's there. You go to school, and it's there, and you don't get any break, any respite from it. So I didn't do that. I had friends outside the police world, but sometimes they would want to know police stuff. They're curious. Hey, this, that, or you tell them something funny. I always preferred to talk about the funny things rather than the dark things. I didn't want to deal with the dark things. I just pushed it down, suppressed it. Let's just let that go. But it stays there in some form or fashion.
So I guess let's get to the event where, obviously ended up having to leave after. Can you describe how that night started?
They always start the slowest night. Mm-hmm. The worst thing you could say as a cop is it's quiet. July 10th, 2013 was one of the quietest nights. We were working what's called a pitman schedule. So it's a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. And at the time, there was economic problems going on. So they fired all our dispatchers and officers rotated on the desk every 4 hours. My term was coming up at 11. So when you work a midnight shift, your job is to put the town to bed. You go and you check all the plazas, you pull on doors, try to make everything safe. That's what you do in a suburban town. So my partner and I, we met up, the other gentleman on the road with me, we met up car to car. They call it the car 69. And we're drinking coffee, and I remember saying to him, God, I wish there was anything to happen. I just wish something would come, an alarm call. I got to put down a deer, whatever I got to do. Something I wanted to come in. And we leave each other. I said, you know what? I'm going to do my plaza checks. I got to go on the desk at 11. So I pull in this parking lot, and over the radio, the officer on the desk says, start heading to this address, open 911 call, unknown emergency.
Can you describe what that means?
So the 911 system in New Jersey was set up this way. Somebody calls 911, a police officer has to go and check. So somebody could call 911 by accident, you still got to show up. And the reason for that is somebody could be getting held at gunpoint or getting held at knife point. Misdials are very common. Somebody dials 911 and they think they're going to get in trouble and they hang up. Well, we always got to go. Cell phones, it's a little different. You got to triangulate it and use longitude and latitude, and you can find out what cell phone tower it hit from. Back then, anyway. So this what some people do if they're in real distress, they can call 911, but they can't talk. So that's what happened here. So I quick turn around, throw my lights on. It's about 10:45 at night. I think the official time was 10:47. And I start heading that way. My partner is right behind me. We're doing about 70 miles an hour. It's late at night. There's nobody around. No sirens because we don't want to alert anything. The address we're going to is an ongoing domestic incident. We knew what was going on in there. The gentleman, whose name was Anthony Vocatoro, sent an email to his ex-girlfriend with a gun to his head. And so a temporary restraining order was filed 3 days prior, but never delivered.
So you had already had interactions with her about
Not me personally.
but the department.
The department, yes, they have. So we knew this stuff. I'd seen the picture with him with a gun to his head. So we kind of know that something's about to happen. So on our way there, we're going car to car. We're saying, hey, you know, go up to the front door, just keep an eye for the back, make sure nobody's running out. I pull up my car right in front of the house. It's a townhouse complex. I leave my car running because you always left your car running. Cell phone's in the car. We go up to the door, and we can hear on the other side of the door. You don't knock right away. You can hear there's arguing going on. So my partner, we make this makeshift plan. There was a lieutenant there, this plan where he's going to go cover the back. I'm going to cover the front. And on a signal, I'm going to try to breach that front door to try to go in there and see what's going on. I can't see him. I can't see my partner. He's covering the back sliding glass door. I go to my car and I get a Halligan bar, which is like a fireman's crowbar. And oddly enough, I didn't realize this would affect me so much. I was just at the 9/11 Museum at Ground Zero last week. And in one of the cases, I'm walking past it with my partner. And I go, hey, look, Halligan bar. And I just talked about a Halligan bar like a half an hour prior. And it kind of got me. So on a signal, contrary to popular belief, you can't kick down a door, especially when it's steel. You can kick down a closet door, but not a front door. Yeah. But there's a way to breach it. So with this bar, you hammer at the lock, you pop the hook in there, and you pop it. So we keyed up his mic, and we go. What I didn't know is, so I get 3 bangs in there. The guy, I found this out later, this guy had his gun pointed at the door. First person that goes through the door is going to get it. And that would have been me. So after about the 3rd whack, because you got to hammer this thing hard, I hear pop, 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 pop. 4 shots. You drop the bar, you go back, get down behind cover. You're like, holy shit, what the hell just happened? You know, you go over the radio, shots fired, shots fired. I'm trying to find my partner, trying to find out what's going on. I'm worried that my partner's is shot. What had happened was Anthony Vocatore started raising his gun to his girlfriend once he realized the jig was up and he was going to kill her. And they exchanged gunfire. He gets hit in the small of the back. He's, it's just like, I guess it was a flesh wound. Other cars, once you hear shots fire, other cars are starting to show up. They have the front door. I'm just worried about my partner. I start running around the back. I'm met by this kid who meets face to face. And he says, he's going to kill my mom. He's going to kill my mom. Kid's like 17, 18 years old. Her son had been in the apartment when all this was going down. I go in the back. I find my partner. He's fine. He's fine. You can see the gunshots in the sliding glass door. I cannot see the actor. I can only see the victim. She's up against the wall. She's got her knees to her chest. She's in clear distress. But she's not looking at us. We come up with this little plan. There was 4 of us back there. 1 lieutenant who sort of hung back, and there was a sergeant and me and my partner. And we go up on this little privacy deck. I'm looking around, and you gotta come up with something in the blink of an eye. I go off to the right behind some patio furniture because I could see everything except I can't find the actor. I don't know where he is. We're not quiet, and she's not looking at us, but I don't pick that up. She's actually looking like off to the side. I find out now she's looking at him. He's behind, he's to the left of the door. The other 2 officers stand by the right. The stairs are off to the right. So I can see everything, and I think I got a good spot. Our plan was to throw one of the chairs through the sliding glass door, go in there, and get her. That was our plan. The minute that chair goes through the door, I hear people when they have near-death experiences see this big flash of light. Well, that's kind of what I saw. I just saw a flash of light. I feel heat. I feel gunpowder. I feel my left ear wiggle. What he did, he was standing behind. If the door was here, he just went like this, fired the gun. He just fired randomly. He came really close though. I hit the ground and everything just slows down. You think you're going to panic. I didn't. I thought very clearly. The other two officers had an easy egress to get off the deck, and they did. I'm trapped. I may look spry, but I'm not. I'm not the quickest person in the world. Now I'm stuck. But like I said, I'm thinking very clearly, very lucid. Cops will take their keys and they'll put their key ring over top of their antenna on their radio. When I fell down on the ground, my keys fell off. I was able to pick up my keys, put them back on. And now I'm bleeding. I have no idea if I'm not shot. I have no clue in the world. I know my shoulder hurts, but I don't know whether I'm shot or not. The other officers, I can hear them screaming, "Are you shot? Are you hit?" And I said, "I don't know. I see a lot of blood," because I could see blood all over the place. What had happened was when I went down, I fell on all the broken glass and it chewed up my arms. But I didn't know at the time. So now I'm in this position that I can't get out of. He's shot at police twice. There's no reason why he's not going to continue to do it. I'm pretty much resigned to the fact that I'm going to die. This is it. I have a 3-year-old at home. I have an 8-month-old at home. My 3-year-old will remember me. My 8-month-old is never going to know me. He's going to see pictures. My wife's going to have to raise these kids by herself. And there's not a damn thing I can do about it, but I make my peace. And I'm just very calm. I'm talking to you the same way I'm talking. I'm acting the same way I'm acting now. I'm not excited. I'm not scared. I'm not fearful in any way. I make it clear to myself that while I believe I'm going to die, this guy's coming with me. So I get in a shooting position. I get on my stomach in a prone position, put my gun out, try to make myself as small a target as possible, just waiting for him to peek his head around the corner. All of a sudden, I'm stuck there for maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, feels like 10 years. I start feeling the back of my pants going up. One of the officers who stayed there started picking me up by my belt to help me off while another officer was holding cover. Now, you talk about that thin blue line that we talked about. One of the officers who was there is probably still running. He left me for dead. I'll never forgive him. As much as he's never once called and apologized. He went off and called the chief. We're in an active shooter situation. He's calling administration. But he has to one day answer for what he did. Not to me. He's a non-event in my life. So I get off the deck. We watch the victim stand up against the wall and sleek out the driveway or the garage. The actor runs upstairs. We're done. Everybody's out of the house. There's nobody left. He's upstairs. He's calling 911. We hold perimeter. Our job is over. We just have to hold perimeter. But we fully expect him to come out, guns a-blazing, suicide by cop. So I'm standing in the back, a little ways back from the deck, just waiting for him to come out. We held perimeter in the July heat with my arms. I got glass everywhere in my arm for 2 hours until the state police team's unit showed up and relieved us. They walked us out to the side. And you just breathe this sigh of relief. You're like, I survived that one. I get ordered to go to the hospital to get all the glass. I didn't want to go, but I get ordered to go. But I got a problem now. My cell phone's in my car, which is still running in front of the house. That's been there for 2.5 hours. I can't even call my wife. Now, all the spouses of police will always talk. Nowadays, they're all on the same text thread. I have to let my wife know from me before anybody else knows. So can you imagine this? This is how big of a jerk I am. I take the EMT's phone, and it's the one number I know off the top of my head. I call her number. It's 2 o'clock or it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Hey, hon, it's me. I just want to let you know I'm in a shooting. I'm not shot. I have to go to the hospital to get glass removed from my arm. I'll call you when I can. I don't have my cell phone. I'll be home soon. Click. What an asshole. This woman got woken up from a sleep to find out her husband was in a shooting, has no information, but it was the best thing I knew how to do at the time. I didn't do it to be mean. I did it to try to get her information. I didn't want her hearing this from anybody else. So they take me to the hospital. They remove most of the glass from my arm. And by the time I get back, he was just about getting talked out. He comes out. They arrest him. I go get my car, speak to the detectives briefly, do my reports, and off I go. Now, the hospital told me I didn't have to come into work that next night, and which was great because then I had a 4-day weekend. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I was like, great, I need a break.
Who doesn't love those?
Yeah, look, I got a 4-day break. Never thinking anything of it. And I was proud of the job that we did. We did nobody got killed. He was shot, minor wound, non-life-threatening. She got out. Both victims got out. Great, awesome. So I go home and I got such an adrenaline dump. I go out for a run. I walk my dog. I just try to work some of that out of me. I can't get it out. So I of course hug my wife, hug my kids, tighter than I've ever hugged them in my life. Then I try to lay down for a couple hours. I'm in and out of sleep. Mm. Police they all want to know what happened. So I wake up to like 50 phone calls. I get back to a couple of them, and I don't think anything of it. I call the people who were there, find out if they're okay. That's all, that's my main concern. And I go about my day. My wife doesn't really know how to react to me. She doesn't know if I'm hurting or just hurt. But she is happy that I'm home. And we decide, you know what? Her mother's going to watch the kids. Her and I are going to go out to dinner, go see a movie, just decompress, relax, kind of celebrate that I didn't die. So we go see a movie. The movie is This Is the End by Seth Rogen. Comedy, right? This is when Seth Rogen used to be funny.
Crazy ass movie too.
Yeah. This is when he used to be funny. He's no longer funny anymore. And there's a scene, if you've watched that movie, there's a scene in the beginning where you'll see a big flash of light, a bang, and certain people get sucked up to heaven and the ones who are on hell sort of stay on earth. They're in the convenience store. I lose my shit. I start hyperventilating. My heart is just pounding. I mean, I could almost hear my heart pounding. I start sweating. I can't breathe. I don't really want to tell my wife. I've already put her through enough. She didn't sign up for any of this. This is my cross to bear. I have to leave. So I said, Lee, you know what? My stomach hurts because I'm a good liar. I'm a great liar. My stomach hurts. I got to go to the bathroom. I go out in the hallway and I can't stop sweating. I can't catch my breath. I'm in full panic mode. I've tried to go back into the theater, but the door feels like it's made out of lead. I just can't even open the door. After like 15 minutes, she comes out and she goes, "Hey, you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." I don't know. We ate something. I ate something that didn't agree with me. I don't feel so good. The sad part is she knew. She knew what was going on, but she gave me some grace and didn't say anything. She goes, "You know what? This movie sucks anyway." I didn't really like the movie anyway.
Yeah, it was definitely out there.
It's just not my type of movie. So we go home, and that night is when nightmares started. And I started having some horrific nightmares where I'd wake up, I'd have these night terrors where I'd wake up screaming, or I'd wake up so wet, I think I pissed myself.
Do you remember the dreams?
A lot of them were anxiety-filled dreams, like Keystone Cops type of stuff, where you pull your gun out and all your bullets fall out, or you pull the trigger and a flag comes out, or you put your magazine in and you forgot to load your gun, stuff like that. Or somebody's calling for help and you're just driving around and you can't find the address, stuff like that. But they seem to go on forever, and it's just pure anxiety. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, all right, you know what? I was just in a shooting. This will pass. This is going to be all right. But I don't want to go to sleep because I'm afraid of what will happen. So my wife decides that we're going to go down and take the kids down to see my parents down in South Jersey. the whole ride down there, she thinks it's going to be good for me just to get away. The whole ride down there, I'm not saying much. I'm sort of quiet, trying to figure out what's going on. We get down there and people are kind of asking me questions that I don't want to answer. So I just sort of stay quiet. When it comes time to leave, my 3-year-old spills chocolate milk on his car seat. I lost my shit. I start yelling at him like he burnt down my house over chocolate milk. Now, what any good mother will do is she'll try to step in front. It's not that I was going to hit him, but I was just yelling at him. I was screaming at him. She steps in front. Now she's the focus of my wrath. So it's about a 2-hour drive from my parents back home on the Garden State Parkway. I was yelling and screaming so bad. My wife was begging me to let her and a 3-year-old and an 8-month-old out on the Garden State Parkway, which is a major highway, because she didn't want to be in the car anymore. By the time I get home, there's something wrong. I need help. Something's going on. I don't know what the hell to do. I call one of the police helplines, and they hook me up with a therapist. So that Monday morning, I have to go to the doctors to get the rest of the glass removed from my arm. The nurse is in there. She's picking that stuff. And I remember her asking me, she goes, "Are you okay?" Because I hadn't slept, so I probably looked like shit. She goes, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm good. It's just glass. It's no big deal." She goes, "That's not what I'm talking about. Are you okay?" I start crying, like hysterically crying. And
at that point, could you remember the last time that you had cried or kind of showed that type of emotion?
I'll bet you it's since I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
It just poured out. Oddly enough, I had to go to a critical incident stress management debriefing that day. So you're supposed to have those about 48 hours to 72 hours after the incident. Well, my department ended up having it like 5 days after. And they talk to you about all sorts of stuff. And so we're sitting in the squad room, and our department had taken our shotguns out of our cars because somebody left a round in there or whatever it was. It was so stupid, but they took them out. And I remember one of the lieutenants saying, "Oh, we're going to get the shotguns back in the cars." I'm like, "Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Maybe some good stuff's going to come out of this." "Oh, yeah, but it's only going to go in supervisors' cars." Well, again, I lost my shit to the point where the rest of the officers, so I didn't get fired or charged for insubordination, had to pick me up and walk me out of the squad room. I'm in trouble. Like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just losing it. It goes thought, action. And now I'm going to therapists. They're prescribing me medication. They prescribe you anti-anxiety and antidepressants. And the antidepressants have just horrible side effects. The benzos weren't bad. I'm going to tell you why the benzos weren't bad. Because I started drinking, because that was the only thing that sort of calmed me down. Mm-hmm. And you pop a couple benzos and drink. Very dangerous.
Been a big drinker prior to this too.
Not every day. And now it's every day. Every day I'm drinking, because it's the only thing that's given me some peace. I got real good at drinking tequila. I was about to turn pro. But you pop a couple benzos and drink, that can kill you. Mm-hmm. That will kill you eventually. But you're not thinking clearly, because immediately I became scared of everything and afraid of nothing. I wasn't afraid to pop benzos, which I knew were dangerous, pop benzos and drink, but I was scared to go to sleep. I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but I was literally scared of everything and afraid of nothing. I wasn't afraid to go walking at 4 o'clock in the morning through the woods, but I was scared when my youngest would cry. I had to get out of the house. I'm starting to change. I'm starting to turn into this monster. There's actually a picture of me and my wife. It's about 3 weeks after the incident, and you see my face. My face is different. My face has changed. It's hollow. There's no soul. And I look at that picture every once in a while because it reminds me. I just don't know what to do anymore. I don't know how this is going to play itself out. I don't know how this is going to end. I got to try to get back to work. I got a family to support. Now that's worrying me, because I don't know where my career is going to go. It's a job that I loved. But I do know this. If I kill myself, my family will be financially taken care of from my pension, which I find out later is a big myth. Doesn't really happen that way.
How does it happen?
So what most cops think is you'll get paid 3.5 times your salary if you die while you're an active police officer.
Mm-hmm.
But if you kill yourself, it doesn't happen. Your spouse will get whatever your contribution is to the pension system, and her health benefits will get shut off after 60 days. But I didn't know this.
Yeah.
I thought she's going to get upwards of like $400,000. She'll be all right. She'll find somebody else. She's young. And it starts going downhill. So I start getting paranoid because I'm not sleeping. Now, I never carried my off-duty gun off-duty. Never. Unless I was going into a bad area. It was more of a liability. I started carrying it. I had an ankle holster. I started carrying it everywhere. I can't take my son crying. I can't take loud noises. When thunder and lightning storms hit, I would shit my pants. Fireworks, forget it. If somebody lit off fireworks, I'd go hide in a closet. And something else is, my 3-year-old son, I bought him all the toys that I had when I was a kid. You know, I bought him Nerf guns and stuff. He's playing with his Nerf gun. He points the Nerf gun at me. I pull the gun out of his hand, like a police maneuver. You know, you quick, you snap it. And the look on a kid's face when they don't know what's going on, it's just blank. It's this scary look. They just sort of look at you, and he's looking at me like this. And I realized that I just scared the shit out of my 3-year-old. I take the Nerf gun, and I snap it in two, and I throw it in the garbage. It's right there. I walk out of the house, and I don't want to be found. I got to think some things through. Park my truck in about a mile from where I'm going, take my cell phone, turn it off, put it in the glove box, and I walk into the woods with a bottle of water. I stay in the woods for 3 days, sitting up against a tree, listen to the leaves rustle, not sleeping. You start thinking that this world would be better off without me. You're turning into something that you don't want to be. You're turning into something that's scaring your family. You know, nobody knows. My wife is getting called every name in the book because I'm going through the beginning stages of post-traumatic stress. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning stages of post-traumatic stress, you have a brain injury, your synapses aren't firing, so it's thought action. You walk down the street, you see somebody who did you wrong. You're like, man, I'd like to spit in their face, but you don't because you know that there's consequences to that. With post-traumatic stress, it's I'd like to spit in their face, and you spit in their face. My wife got called every bad name. She got stuff thrown at her. I broke like probably 6 remotes, throwing them at her. I even spit in my wife's face. How demoralizing for that woman to get spit in the face by me. So these are all things that I'm playing in my head while I'm sitting in the woods.
Can I ask, when you were in the woods, because I hear this is very interesting in situations when you're thinking in a situation like that, would you say that it was clarity? Seems like a weird word to use, but clarity in the sense that you were able to just kind of stem line on those thoughts? Like, how would you describe that?
You start trying to build a case, just like a lawyer would build a case, or a cop would build a case. You're like, okay, well, this person was here, and then they did this, and then they did this, and then they did this, and it kind of led them to here. So I'm building the case. I'm building a case for suicide. I'm walking myself through why I'm building that rock solid case, like to get me to that point where, oh yeah, you definitely gotta kill yourself. I'm doing all these things, scaring my son, scaring my wife, just acting horribly. I'm not sleeping. I'm turning into a monster. I don't know what my career is going to happen. I don't. Everybody's going to look at me funny because I'm having mental problems. And it's not clarity. It's clarity of thought, knowing what I think I got to do because I feel weak. Like my mind is broken. I feel like the biggest pussy on the planet because I can't handle this. I was a strong guy. Played college football. Was a cop for all this time. Survived a very abusive household. And I can't take when a guy whizzes a bullet past my head? Come on. This is ridiculous. I felt horrible. So I finally come home. I don't know what made me come home. I don't really remember. I remove myself from the bedroom because I can't possibly sleep in the bed next to my wife with night terrors and sweating, and I don't really want her to see me. She already, in my mind, she already thinks I'm weak anyway for having to deal with this stuff. I can't see her, I don't want to degrade myself any further in her eyes. So I'm sleeping downstairs, and I start thinking, all right, this is it. This is the time. I write a note, and I put the bank information. I write a note to each of my kids, pretty much apologizing that your dad's such a loser, I'm paraphrasing. Write a note to my wife, I'm sorry, I failed you. I mentioned my grandfather in there, and I wish I could be half the man that he was. And I go in my office, and I have a wall in my office of any awards I ever got, my high school diploma, my college diploma, my 8th grade diploma, my graduate degrees, everything's there. And I'm looking at it, and I have my gun in my hand. My off-duty gun was a Chief Special 38, snub-nosed, nickel-plated, lightning grips, customized to me, perfect. I'm going to kill myself. And I'm going to do it downstairs because I don't want to do it upstairs because I don't want anybody to find me, because that's how warped your mind is. Mm-hmm. Your mind's so warped that you're thinking, hey, if I just do it in a different room, they'll never know. Well, somebody's got to find you. I cocked the hammer back, which now makes a double action, a single action gun. I put the end of the gun in my mouth. There's a distinct taste that gunpowder has, and I recently qualified with that weapon, so I know it was on the tip. I could taste it. I can feel the sight on my teeth. I can feel the ridges on the trigger. I can feel the notches on the hammer. And I have it backwards. I have my thumb in there. And I'm there, and I'm slowly putting pressure. I'm waiting for the bang. Whenever you go to shoot, they say, don't anticipate the bang. Be surprised by it. And that's how you're going to be able to shoot straight. And that's what I'm waiting for. I'm just waiting for the bang. And I start replaying this incident in my head. And I'm pretty much begging for a reason. Give me one reason why I don't want to do this. I lost my faith, so I don't even have a God to pray for. And I have it in my mouth for probably 20 minutes, and tears are rolling down my face, and it's a bad scene. The oddest thing happens. I pause just for a second, and I pull the gun out of my mouth, and I have it sitting in my hand, and that gun is 1 pound, 9 ounces. And that gun might have weighed 50 pounds, or at least what it felt like. And I don't do it. And when I go out and talk about this stuff, I'll say, spoiler alert, I didn't kill myself that night. But there's something really wrong, and I can't have this gun in my house. So at this time, I've totally isolated myself from the police department. I don't talk to anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. There are some people who come in and check on me. And then there's a lot of people who call, or some people who call. I don't answer their calls. I don't pick up their phone. I don't know what to say to them. And then there's people who don't call that you thought would call. I used to hold it against them, but they didn't know what to say to me, nor would I have taken their call anyway. So, but I do. There was one person, Terry West is his name. I said, Terry, I can't have my gun in my house anymore. He says, all right, no explanation. He didn't ask for anything. He took some grace on me. He said, put it in a lockbox. We're going to bring it here. And that's what I did. Put it in. But there's many different ways to skin a cat. I tried several different ways to kill myself. I tried to hang myself. I tried to take pills, which kind of sucks because I took a handful of Klonopin and, I just lay my head back hoping to just drift off because I'm a big pussy at this point. I want to kill myself, but I don't want it to hurt. And my wife must have seen something because she called emergency services. So I get shook awake by a bunch of people standing over me. They're like, did you take pills? And I'm a good liar, right? Very lucid though. No, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm just tired. I'm just trying to get some rest. Well, your wife says you took pills. I'm like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. I didn't take any pills. But I took a lot of pills. And failed on that one. So each time I've tried to kill myself and failed, it compounds the situation. Because now I'm a failure at life. I'm a failure at trying to kill myself. I'm just a failure. Like it's starting to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't know where to go. I'm drinking so heavily. I'm never sober. First thing I do in the morning is when I wake up is drink. Last thing I do before I go to bed is drink. And I sat in that darkness for a very long time, trying to do anything to keep my mind occupied. But one of the things I was doing the whole time is I was going to therapy. And I had a great therapist. He only worked with police officers. His name was Dr. Eugene Stefanelli. He was our union doctor. He was our state PBA doctor. And, but he kind of gave me a death blow because he's this crazy old Italian from Newark. Like if you ever watch Many Saints in Newark, that's where he grew up. But he knows cops. And the reason that cops get along with him is because he can speak the same way we do. So one day he comes in and he's a gun fanatic. One day he comes in and he has a Colt 45 Bakelite handle with the ones they used to give the GIs in World War II. And it's an antique and it's beautiful. The bluing is still on there. And he says, hey, listen, I think I'm going to sell this gun. What do you think of it? Mind you, I've been handling guns my whole life. I've never had any fear of them. He puts this gun in my hand. And I'm trying to be masculine, right? I'm trying to be manly. And I'm looking at this gun. I'm starting to sweat and I'm sort of shaking a little bit. And I don't want this gun, but I can't hand it back right away because I don't want to seem like a wuss. I'm like, oh, it's really nice. It's great. And as soon as I could, I'm like, here you go. Here you go. And he tells me, he goes, that was the moment I knew you could never be a police officer again. And that I need to retire. I wasn't able to go back. So that place that I put my whole life into is gone. Now what? I'm drinking like a fish. My life is in chaos. I don't know why my wife is still living with me. What the hell do I do now? You're telling me I can't be a police officer. I sort of get kind of angry. While I was doing all this stuff, I was attending group therapy with other cops who were involved in shootings. And I noticed one thing, that there were some cops there when I first got in that helped me along. And I would tell them what was going on in my life, and they're like, yeah, me too. So I didn't feel as abnormal because you feel like you're the only one going through any of this stuff, and you're not. It's a big lie. There's a lot of people going through this stuff. But you feel more comfortable opening up to somebody who's actually been there. Mm-hmm. And I go through this whole process, and at some point something broke where I said, I got to stop all this stuff. My doctor gives me, not an ultimatum. He goes, either you go to rehab or I'm going to get you committed to rehab because I'm drinking a lot. I'm drinking very, very heavily. So I said, he goes, well, if you check yourself in, you'll be able to check yourself out. But if you get committed, you're there for 30 days. So I said, okay, I'll check myself in, thinking I'm going to check myself out. Mm-hmm. But I took this as an opportunity. I said, something's got to change. Obviously, I can't be a police officer anymore. And I got to start figuring this stuff out. Go down to rehab. I go down there with 3 notebooks. I go down there with a workout plan because I had stopped working out. I just lost all motivation. Told my wife, I said, I'm sorry, I got to go away. Drive down there, longest drive to Princeton House. Longest drive I've ever taken in my life. Right down 206. And to this day, if I got to drive down that road, there's a quick check there. Oh yeah, I stopped there for coffee the last time. It's horrible. It's very hard. Check myself into Princeton House, and I get put in a room with this guy who got busted for heroin. And I was like, did you get arrested? And he goes, yeah, I got arrested. And I said, where'd you get arrested? And he mentions this town. And it's the town my brother works in. And I'm like, no, mind you, my hair's longer, my beard's longer. I don't look like myself anymore. I certainly don't look like a cop. They don't identify us as cops in there. I'm like, oh my God. He doesn't even need to say anything else. I already know where this is going. He's like, do you remember who arrested you? He goes, I'll never forget that motherfucker. I'll never forget him as long as I live. And I'm like, you remember his name? He goes, absolutely. His name gives my brother's name. So I'm sitting in a room in rehab with a guy my brother arrested for heroin. Fantastic. But I will tell you this. When I went into rehab, I got as sober as I was ever going to get the minute I had to get strip searched, bend over, spread my cheeks, and cough. So that same treatment that I used to give to prisoners, I was now getting, and it is a dehumanizing experience. I swore up and down right then, right there, I will never go back. I don't do well in confined spaces. And I never drank again. After a short time, I checked myself out of rehab. I said, I'm done. I'm done. It's time for a change. And I start cleaning myself up. I start repairing some relationships. I had my moments. And on June 1st, 2014, I officially retired from the police department. But I stayed on in group therapy. Those people who helped me out and gave me a little bit of peace, even for that short time I was in group therapy, I owed a debit. And I always said, I am going to pay this back. And I always did. I stayed in group therapy and I helped guys with those same problems that I was having and beyond. Help them through the pension system. Just give them somebody to lean on, somebody who's been there already. And guess what? Every time I did that, I felt better. I started repairing. I started healing. And that's the direction my life's been going ever since. I know that. So it's the same purpose as a police officer, to help people, to give back. It's just in a different form and fashion now.
Let me ask the question going back to, because I definitely want to keep diving into this, but the moments that you were, like you were saying, considering suicide and the number of attempts, and as you said, you'd kind of lost relationship with God. Did that ever sneak into your mind? Was there ever a thought about what's next?
With God, I always had a really strange relationship with God and Jesus. When I was in high school, right outside the principal's office was a statue of Jesus, on the cross like this. Well, I always pictured Jesus as more like my buddy, more familiar. So I would go up and give him a high five. Catholic priests do not find that funny at all. But that was always my relationship with him. And now there's an absence for, this, I'm 39 years old. So for 20 years, I have no relationship with God. But I will say this. Do you remember I had the gun in my mouth and there was that pause? Mm-hmm. That pause was for a reason. I didn't see it then. I said this before, things come into your periphery and it's your choice of whether you recognize them or not. I started to recognize some stuff. Like there's things coming into my life and happening for a reason. I went through some bad stuff. Why? What's the reason? I was put there. There are no chance meetings. There is nothing that happens by chance. I would go to group therapy for a very long time. And COVID hit, so group therapy was no more. I don't do virtual stuff. As you know, we're sitting here together. We're sitting in person. I don't like virtual stuff. So I start a podcast, right? I start the Suffering Podcast. And I have this guy on in episode 17. He's a retired professional hockey player. Used to play for the Flyers. Awesome. It's my team. It's awesome. I think I'm going to get the guy in there. Lives right down the street. I'm going to get him in there, talk about some old hockey stories. He's got some great ones. But he's also a pastor. And so he meets me for coffee one day and we're just talking, some guys that I know, he knows. And a couple days later, before the show, he sends me a text message. Like the show is literally going to be about his hockey stuff. He sends me a text message. He says, "Hey, KD, I'm praying for you." I'm like, you son of a bitch. You're going to pray for me? Who the fuck are you to pray for me? Who the fuck do you think you are? And I get mad. I am so mad that this guy would think he's arrogant enough to pray for me. And it just waited on me and waited on me and waited on me. And by the time his show came up, I switched it to the suffering of a professional hockey player to the suffering of a man of God. It was one of the most impactful episodes I ever did very early on. I was on audio only. Now, one thing about me is I'm always very appreciative of my guests. Anybody who's going to come in and give me their time, I am going to give back to them. And his church happens to be 5 minutes from my house. So I take my kids in there one day to support him. My kids are my buffer. Hey, listen, if I got to get out of there early, they're my escape. Hey, one of them shit their pants. Hey, we got to go. You know, that was the whole thing. And I even told the kids this going in. Strangest thing happened. So the worship leader gets up there and she's singing. And I start crying. And I get this feeling in here. And I still believe at that moment is when I became born again. And we're masked up at the time. And thankfully they couldn't really see. Like I moved my mask up so you couldn't see the tears coming out of my eyes. I don't want my boys to see me weak like that. They've seen enough. I go back again the next week. I wanted to see if I can replicate the same feeling. I ask everybody if they want to go. It's like, hey, anybody want to go to church? Nah, we're good. All right. Go into church, and guess what? Same thing happened. Same exact thing. His words, when he got up there and spoke, his words just touched me. I keep a whole list of notes of things he says on my phone because I go back and reread them. And it was the most incredible feeling I ever felt in my life. I felt like I was touched by the hand of God at that moment. And there's some cool benefits to it. So I told you, I would ask my family, hey, you want to come to church with me? I don't miss a Sunday. The only time I miss a Sunday is when my kids got a game on sports game. I don't miss anything, but I'll always ask my kids if they want to go. One day, my oldest, he's about 12 at the time, 10 or 11 or 12. He says, hey, Dad, you going to church? I said, of course I'm going to church. I said, can I come with you? Like, absolutely. And that became our thing. He starts coming to church with me. And I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. And my youngest, same thing happened to him. I would, him and my oldest, Patrick and I would go to church. Hey, Jim, you want to go to church? Nah, I'm going to play video games with my friends. Okay. Hey, Dad, you going to church? Yeah, of course I'm going to church. Can I come with you and Patrick? Of course. And now we're just this family that goes to church. And I serve. I serve as in the capacity that if they need something, I'm there. They brought me back to my faith. And I got to be honest with you. I know this is going to sound, you're going to get some pushback from this one. My life has gotten exponentially better since I've started to refine my faith. I finally get baptized, and when I went underneath that water, it was noisy. Before I went in, the noise was coming in all directions. I came up from that water, and it was dead quiet.
Really?
So, listen, there's some benefits to this, too, because my pastor is the pastor for the New York Jets, so we have a lot of Jets coming in there. And I had some Jets as my sponsors, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's kind of cool, right? But that's how I can relate to my pastor. He's a retired professional hockey player. It chokes me up to even think about it. He understands me. He gets me. And these other people around me, they get me. They know I come from a very damaged place. Look at me. I don't look like the church-going guy. Time moves on, and now I'm the deacon of that church. This guy who got the crap beat out of him as a kid, always trying to find his identity, always trying to find his place in this world, thought he found it when he became a cop. Every bad behavior known to man, I've done. Tried to drink myself to death, tried to kill myself, tried to hang myself, take too many pills, did awful things to my wife, spit at her. I'm a deacon of a church. And if there's hope for me coming from this place, there's hope for everyone, because I'm nobody special. Now, that being said, just because I've taken this long journey, people make the mistake of thinking I have it all together, because people are always waiting for anybody who advocates for anything to fall, because then they say, see, I told you they're full of shit. I don't have it all together. I have my moments. I fall. I pick myself up. And I know that when I ask for forgiveness, it's genuine. And I ask for forgiveness every single day. Why my wife is still with me, I gotta believe there's something wrong with her, because she's still stuck by me. My kids, I try to be as open with them as I can. Like, they sort of know what happened. They don't know the full extent, but they sort of know. Before I was afraid to be vulnerable in front of my children, I'm no longer afraid to be vulnerable in front of my children. I'm no longer afraid to have them see me cry, because they know Dad is that guy who's extremely sensitive, who's extremely vulnerable, but he'll protect me to the death, and he'll fight to the death. And that's me in a nutshell.
I don't know if there's a better way to end the episode here, man. I mean, that was beautiful. And to hear it come full circle like that, and, you know, the family getting involved, and, you know, being able to kind of find the church again. I mean, yeah, dude, I'm honestly at a loss for words, and I'm often not, but that's amazing, man. I guess to wrap up, if you just want to give a shout out, just let everybody know 2 things. One, obviously where to find your show and everything. But I guess just one piece of advice for those that are maybe in the middle of that journey now.
Well, to start off, you can go to realkevindonaldson.com. Everything's on there. I wrote a book about this whole incident. It's called Man, You're Crazy, because for a short time I did feel crazy. But I'm trying to rebrand certain words. And that's why I have the Suffering podcast, because suffering, it's not a bad thing. Suffering got me here, sitting in front of you. This journey of suffering has put me right where I'm supposed to be. Maybe I was never supposed to become a cop. Maybe I was supposed to be doing this, speaking to people, opening myself up so they can get through this. And that's it gives me much more joy. Like, I had a lot of joy being a police officer. I have much more joy doing this, telling my truth, my story. So in hopes that somebody else will grab onto this and gravitate towards this and say, you know what? If this piece of shit can make it, I can too. But one thing, I don't ever give advice. I give suggestions. Because if you give somebody advice and it's wrong or it doesn't work for them, it doesn't end well. But I do give suggestions. My suggestion is to believe, not know, is to believe that you are never as good as your best day, but you're also not as bad as your worst day. So Psalm 23, which is, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. There's a key component in there that very few people listen to. Yea, though I walk through. It doesn't say, yea, though I go in the darkness and stop. It's, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And to bring it full circle, I told you I was a King David guy. King David wrote Psalm 23, and he kept walking through the valley of the shadow of death. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. Even when times get dark, I'm going to keep walking.